We apologize for the slight delay. We had some technical issues to iron out. At this time, I'll ask Select Board Member Duggan to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will accept a motion for the approval of the minutes of September 21st.
So moved.
Motion made
Second.
and seconded. Are there any discussions on the minutes of September 21st? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. At this time, we offer an opportunity for new public business. That is, business that's not on the agenda that you would like to bring to the attention of the Select Board. Mr. Bradstreet? I don't know what you're signaling, sir.
Ask them to shut off or put their cell phones on vibrate so we're not disturbed, please.
Certainly, thank you. Sound advice, I'm doing the same.
Not that anything I have to say is that important.
So, Mr. Bradstreet?
At a prior meeting, I had asked about the possibility of an information sheet being provided by the electric division, water sewer division on how they arrived at their customer charge or water service charge. Also with an explanation how they arrived at a dollar amount to charge. The other thing would be, would the dollar amount be being increased, decreased quarterly, every 6 months, annually, or if at some point in the future it'd be discontinued? Any?
So I'm not sure, Mr. Bradstreet, but we did have a recent selectmen's meeting, select board meeting, where they came and presented the methodology which they came up with the fees, what the fees represent, how they were applied, and we were informed that they would come back with some more information. However, I can't speak to it going away. It is a surcharge that, and I'll paraphrase, every consumer needs to pay a certain amount because it takes a certain amount of infrastructure dollars to run lines to your home, independent of the amount of electricity you use. However, that $7.50 that was added was offset by a rate reduction. So that they had formula that looked to reduce the rate to compensate for that $7.50. They need a steady stream of income to accommodate for the infrastructure maintenance and improvements. And that's what it was meant to do. I will ask maybe the town clerk or the town manager to get the date of that meeting, because it was pretty extensive. And I can't do it justice here tonight. And I'll put in a plug for Dcat. They do a wonderful job filming us, and all of those past meetings are available on YouTube on the Dcat channel.
Part of it was that I'm here. Not a lot of people show up here, watch TV. I asked merely that a sheet be produced and put in, all the rate payers are the ones that are going to be paying it. Could a sheet, a simple explanation, be put in a bill and sent to, not with a bill, and sent to the people who pay the bills so that they would understand all of this. As I say, I'm here. Some people don't watch this program, and other reasons that they might have missed something.
So
Like me.
I will forward your request to the town manager to the Municipal Light Board for their consideration.
Would appreciate it. Just
Working
tell-
on it.
just
I know you
yes.
want your answer, working on
Yes,
it.
I thank you.
Is there anybody else in the room who has new business, new public business they'd like to offer to the board? Hearing none, we'll move to the agenda. Agenda item number 3, a public hearing will be held under Chapter 138 of the General Laws on the application of 99 West LLC, doing business as 99 Restaurant and Pub, 60 Commonwealth Ave. Brett Zimmerman, manager, for a change of officer/directors at that location. Good evening.
Good, not good morning. Good. I'm a little confused that I'm standing up and not in front of a video screen. So Good evening, Mr. Chair and board members. My name is Joe Devlin. I'm a partner at the firm of Upton, Cannell and Devlin with offices at 112 Water Street in Boston, Massachusetts. Here before you with the change of officer for the 99 restaurant at 60 Commonwealth Avenue here in Danvers. The outgoing officer is Goodlow Partee, who is retiring, and the incoming officer taking his place is Wendy Harkness. This is all occurring down in the headquarters of the upper tier company in Nashville, Tennessee. It'll have no effect on the 65, 99 locations in Massachusetts, particularly the one in Danvers.
Thank you. I appreciate the explanation to the clerk. Are we all set with paperwork?
Yes, we have all the paperwork.
Thank you. I'll open it up to the board. I'll start with Select Board Member Bennett.
No questions.
Select Board Member Mills.
No, thank you, no questions.
Select Board Member Duggan.
Thank you. Just wish you success, ongoing success with the 99 restaurant chain. Almost 70 years now in business. And one of the best employers in that industry in terms of employee retention. Take very good care of your employees, so kudos to you. And you mentioned Water Street, so the first restaurant for 99 restaurants was at 99 State Street by Faneuil Hall, so
I didn't know that.
many years ago.
Very interesting.
And that's where the horseshoe came from. They put the horseshoe over the doorway at that location, so 70 years is something to be very proud of. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Select Board Member Bernard.
All set, thank you.
And I too am all set. This is a public hearing. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak on this subject?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Motion made to close the public
Second.
hearing and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'll entertain a motion on the application.
Oh, my goodness, nobody wants to speak up. Mr. Chairman, make the motion that we approve the application of West LLC, DBA 99 Restaurant and Pub, 60 Commonwealth Ave, Brett Zimmerman, manager for a change of office or director at that location.
Motion made
Second.
and seconded. Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you all.
Nice to see you. Thank you, Counsel. Public hearing will be held to consider whether the license to sell alcoholic beverages held by Massachusetts Fine Wines and Spirits, LLC, doing business as Total Wine Spirits, Beer and More, Jennifer Stenick, manager, 100 Independence Way, should be suspended, revoked, or limited in any way. Is there someone here to speak to this?
Thank you,
I just want to make sure you were here. I'm going to first ask to hear a report from the Chief of Police to remind us of the particulars.
Good evening. On August 2nd, 2021, Danvers Police Department put a press release out informing the area establishments that will be doing compliance checks within the next few weeks. On August 10th, 2021, members from the Juvenile Division and Detective Division obtained the assistance of two 17-year-old high school students, one male, one female, to conduct compliance checks in the town of Danvers. At approximately 5:18 p.m., one of the teens entered the Total Wine, located at the Liberty Tree Mall, and purchased a 6-pack of Bud Light bottles. The teen purchased the bottles of beer with cash provided by the police department. The customer was not carded, made the purchase, exited the store with the receipt and the change and the alcohol, turned it over to the detectives outside. Detectives went inside, identified the manager and the employee. Both are very cooperative with the officers, and those are essentially the facts.
Thank you. Board members, I'll turn to you while the chief is there and ask if you have any questions. I'll start with Select Board Member Mills.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any questions about the facts, but as we proceed, if the chief has any recommendation as far as disposition, I'd be interested in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Select Board Member Duggan.
Nothing at this time.
Select Board Member Bernard.
Nothing at this time?
Select Board Member Bennett.
No questions.
And I have no questions at the moment, Chief. Appreciate it. And welcome. If you'd like to, please go to the podium. We are obviously recording for our local cable access. If you could pull the microphone up a little bit, and we ask you speak into it because they are recording and people want to hear what you have to say.
Sure. Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Attorney Trish Farnsworth on behalf of the licensee, Total Wine. And with me is Darren DeVito, who is the manager, who was on that evening, and also Robert Schaefer, who is the general counsel to Total Wine. We just want to first start off apologizing. This was an unfortunate incident. The employee was fairly new. She was hired on June 24th. The incident was on August 10th. The employee was tip certified. We do have her tips certificate. And she also had store training. She failed to ask for the ID, which is a violation of the policy. And Mr. DeVito will explain to you the policy and what has been done also since. You violate the policy, you're terminated. Unfortunately, she was terminated. And, I think the police chief also mentioned that Mr. DeVito was cooperative and apologetic that evening. And so again, we're just here to apologize and explain really what we have in place, what we're trying to do better, and answer any questions you may have. So I'll turn it now to Mr. DeVito.
Good evening, everyone. Hopefully I don't talk too loud into this. My voice tends to carry a little bit, sorry. But first off, I do want to apologize for what happened that evening. When it was brought to my attention what had happened, I was completely shocked and kind of beside myself, but again, apologetic to the officers that were there. The policy that we have in the store is when an associate is hired, no matter where they're going to work, they have to go through the tips training, which every associate does before they hit the floor. And that is held in a binder at the front of the store for anybody to look at, if requested. Throughout the day, we talk about obviously making sure we're constantly on top of checking IDs, making sure if we identify a minor that we think may be a minor that's in the building that, we're observant and where they're going. Also, part of the policy, anybody that looks under 30 is ID'd. It's a standard policy that we have. I've had customers question me about it. And unfortunately, it is our policy, and that's what we abide by. Currently now, what we're trying to do is get everybody retrained, put them through the training again, as well as we talk about it in the morning at our meetings with the opening associates and throughout the day. So we are trying to get everybody retrained again to make sure that we raise that awareness and let them know that this is a serious situation and that they will lose their job. So unfortunately, it happened. We do apologize, and hopefully it doesn't happen again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So if I can paraphrase, the facts that the chief presented are not in dispute.
No.
Okay, great, thank you. I will start with Select Board Member Duggan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you mentioned, besides the tip training, what other training takes place like on an ongoing basis? Is it like a weekly, monthly? Do you have like team meetings to
Well, we have
review?
managers meetings during the week, and then, throughout the day, we're monitoring the cashiers. We try to oversee, how they're ringing out the customers. If we observe, somebody in their line that, may look, underage, we try to go over and watch how they're ringing out and making sure that they're asking that customer for the ID. And it's just, constant, talking about it, speaking about it, and just raising that awareness throughout the store.
Right. So when you talk about placing blame on the associate, the person that actually had the interaction with the underage purchaser, I think it's a bigger issue than that. It points to more of a systemic problem, right? So, like from a management perspective. So, for what steps have you taken in addition to what you had in place before this this incident? Have you added any additional steps?
Well, I think, again, it's just with the observing of raising the awareness of who's walking through the door. I can honestly say, 2 days ago I was leaving, I saw 2 young men walking in the door. I said to my front-end supervisor, let's make sure that they, check out together, because if we see 2 people walk in the store and either they look underage or one may look underage, we try to keep an eye on them, because sometimes one will try to walk out the door. And I know myself, I've stopped many people by saying, do you have an ID, who are you with? I saw who you walked in with. And it happens, quite frequently, and unfortunately, we don't serve those people. We can't serve either one of them.
So visual observations, those are bound to not be 100%, right? So you may be distracted, not you personally, but others that you have assigned to that task. So what about your point of sale software? Does that prompt the cashier to check IDs?
Well, what it does is when we do ask for the ID, if the customer is between 21 and 22, it'll code up to saying that you have to call the manager over, but the register will not proceed unless they ask for the ID.
Okay, and that's for all customers?
Mm-hmm. We have to verify an age.
All right, so if you go to a place like Fenway Park, they just card everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're 21 or 91, everyone gets carded, and a lot of businesses do that. They don't take any chances. So have you given thought to including
I've
that?
basically said card everybody. I mean, it's just, we should ask everyone.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because otherwise you run the risk of just visually looking at somebody and trying to determine their age, especially if you're an older person.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a good method, I think, to verify whether or not the person is of legal age. I would just card every single person and just make that the policy. That seems pretty straightforward to me. All right, that's all I have at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Select Board Member Menard.
Thank you. I agree with Matt Duggan. I think you should card everybody. And I think it comes down to management, supervisors, and training. Quarterly meetings, whatever, role play, what if this one, and do you have cameras that show people, that maybe someone sits, can go through the cameras and look. But I think the management needs to really do some more training with the people. But that's it.
Thank you. Select Board Member Bennett.
Thank you. So I heard you earlier say that your policy was if they looked under 30 to card them.
It is, if they look under 30, there's signs posted right at every register.
Okay, and now you just said that basically you're going to tell your employees to card everybody.
I will put that in place.
So, right, and as my previous two fellow members suggested, that should be your policy, period, to card everybody. And I'll tell you, Costco does that without fail. It's not onerous for them just to ask everybody for their ID. I believe BJ's does as well. And we've found over the years that these warehouse-type liquor stores fall down on that policy. BJ's and Costco has been before us, now you're before us. So it reaffirms my concern with your large liquor stores, warehouse-type stores, that your employees can get lax unless the manager stays on top of them. So I would hope that that's the policy going forwards, and that the next time I visit your store that I get carded, even though I look very young. I haven't been carded in there in a long time, so we're not doing that. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Select Board Member Mills.
Thank you. Dan, you look good for your age.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. DeVito, do you mind me asking how many cashiers you have, your full staff of cashiers?
I'll say 20.
And of course, you can't tell me all the age. What's the age group that you aim for?
We really don't, obviously they have to be 21 to work in the store. We really don't aim for a certain age. When we interview and hire, if we feel they're, qualified to do the job, then we really don't aim for a certain age.
Okay. It's not like all retired school teachers?
No.
And it's not high school seniors?
No.
Okay, it's just who happens to apply.
Right, I have, there's a full mix.
Just wondering, thank you.
Sure, no problem.
Is that all? Mr. Mills, is that all?
Yeah, oh, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do have a couple of questions, if you don't mind. Is your name on the liquor license?
Not currently, there is a transition happening right now. I will be appearing, I guess, on the 19th to
Okay.
have that taking place, I believe.
Correct.
And then I will ask this again, because I do it consistently. We will be looking for your name and obviously alternates, and asking that someone, you or an alternate, be present in the store
Okay,
at the time of, when open.
sure.
So if you have to pick 4 alternates, pick 4 alternates, but we would like to know that someone who's tied directly to the license is in the store.
Will do.
Obviously, the corporation has rules. It's a big corporation. Get it, understand it. Are you going to be cobbled to enact a card everyone policy if it is the policy of the corporation in the threshold is at 30? There's a public image here, and I'm cognizant of that. The corporation may say, we'd like you to card anybody under 30. If they're over 30, we don't want to impose that. You're suggesting you're going to add a card everyone, and I just want to know if you're going to be able to do that in the confines of the corporate policy.
I think we'll be able to if it's rolled out with, obviously, we have to get everybody on board with it, and it'll have to be rolled out to the entire front end and team, the whole store team.
So you have the autonomy as in that location to enhance the corporate rules?
Absolutely.
Okay, just want to make sure.
I don't think I would get any pushback, since I think it's a very, what we're talking about is very sensitive, and I think, to this gentleman's point, is if we just had card everybody, we avoid any issues at all.
Yeah. There are obviously, you've heard several ways and recommendations based on our being on the board a number of years and hearing other people come and say what their solutions are. I'll offer one that I know that at a local grocery store that also sells liquor, if the cashier is under 21, they can't process the sale of alcohol. They have to call a manager over just for that extra level of the manager providing that insight. So
Absolutely.
the board is not going to tell you how to run your business. We're asking you to identify what your training is, what remediation you took, and what you're going to do to control this in the future. So that's my questions. This is a public hearing. Members of the public are welcome to offer comment. Is there anybody who wishes to do so? Yes,
I'm sorry,
please.
and we hate to indulge you further, but I think it's important that you hear from the general counsel, who actually
Certainly.
flew up here from Maryland for this
Thank you.
hearing.
Oh, we don't want to, we want you to get your credit. Counselor?
I'm sorry. Good evening. I'm from Baltimore. I'm a long-suffering Baltimore Orioles fan. I happen to know that there's a playoff tonight, so I'll try to be as brief as I can.
If you're an Orioles fan, you don't have to say long suffering. That's just no.
I came up here really for 2 reasons. One, because I am the chief legal officer for the company. We have over 12,000 employees, and compliance is sadly my responsibility, and I feel like some responsibility is borne by me. So I came up here. I will tell you that this was an issue that did not get just reached in the store in Danvers, but it reached the very, very top of our organization. Our owners were aware of this situation. They're extremely vigilant about sale to minors. We do an extensive amount of training with our employees around the year. I think we do a lot to invest in technology to try to prevent these kinds of things from happening. And in addition, we spend somewhere around $2 million last year on our employees, additional compensation, just to incentivize them. After we drilled it into their head about how important this is, we incentivize them to card people who even look like they are 30 years old. And in fact, we spent $2 million doing that last year, really to try to prevent incidents like this from happening. They are rare, fortunately, but we're not perfect. We try to be perfect, but obviously we were not perfect on this incident. I think I'm not offering excuses, but I do want to just tell you something, a little bit about this incident. And I'm not, believe me, I'm not making an excuse, but I took the time to actually watch the video of what happened, because I was concerned about this. I was concerned about the fact that the employee had only worked for us for 6 weeks. I wanted to make sure that she had been properly trained. I confirmed that she had been. She was tip trained. She received additional training from the stores. She was not our prototypical front-end team member. It's a hard job. She was an elderly woman, but very vibrant and very eager to work for us. I interviewed all the people who knew her, said she was a fabulous employee, always willing to help out, always eager to go the extra mile. And what I saw on the video was that on that particular night, when the officer came in, or not the officer, the young lady was working with the police, the front-end team member was having a problem with her computer, and she was trying to get her tape replaced because something had happened with the computer. It went down, and I could actually see her fumbling underneath of the machine. She dropped the tape, picked it up, was trying to get it undone, trying to get it in the machine. Now, she'd only worked for us for 6 weeks, and she was having a hard time doing that. And I think what happened is she didn't see the young woman come into the lane. I think she knew she was there. She sensed that she was there. And I think she sensed that she was taking far too much time to try to get her machine to work. I counted over a minute. And when she looked up, she saw this young woman in the lane. And I think what she was thinking was, I've taken too much time, I'm not doing my job well, and I need to serve that customer right away. Now, that's not an excuse. She was trained to ask for an ID. She was incentivized to ask for the ID, but she didn't do it, I think, because of the circumstances she found herself in that night. That's not an excuse. It's just some context for why this happened. Now, I also looked in her record and saw that she had been compensated, only with us for 6 weeks. But on July 23rd and on August 6th, just a few days before this happened, she had received additional compensation, about $50 in a week, for having refused to serve alcohol to a minor. So we applauded her for that, gave her additional money for doing that. And I think she would have done that in this instance had it not been for that unfortunate circumstance with her computer. So we're very embarrassed by this. It's not easy to come before a board and talk about these issues. It's something that is very important to our business. We try very hard to avoid it, but accidents do happen, and I think that's what happened here. So unless you have any questions, that's all I wanted to share with the board. Thank you very much for indulging me.
Mr. Chairman, motion to close the public hearing.
I just want to give people, I did allow council to get up before. I just want to make sure, is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak on this? No? Thank you.
May I say something?
Please.
I think your presentation was very helpful. I hope that the employee can get her job back, frankly. And are you comfortable with what it seems the accommodation that your local manager has made of carding everybody? Is that something that legally you can work with and that you as general?
I think it is. It's something that I will talk to the owners about. We try to give all of our stores a little bit of autonomy to do what they think is right. It's not often when we have to come to these kinds of hearings and we haven't done what we should have been doing. And so I don't think it's an unreasonable request, and I think the manager is correct that he does have the autonomy to do what is required to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And I will recommend that to our owners and ensure that that happens. So I don't think you have to worry about that. It is not our policy nationwide. In fact, every year we get hundreds of letters from people who are complaining about the fact that they were asked for their ID or they were with another family member who didn't have their ID with them, and we refused sale to that person because we don't allow anyone in the store, even in the line, who doesn't have the ability to prove that they're of age, whether or not they're purchasing alcohol, because we don't want somebody buying it for someone who's a minor. So we get a lot of hate mail about the policy of carding everybody who looks 30. But I think under these circumstances, it's not an unreasonable request, and it's certainly one that we would abide if that's the decision of the board.
And unless our police chief had a contrary recommendation, I hope that you can rehire the person and put her on 10 years probation. Just an idea. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
There's a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. I'll accept a
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we revoke their license for 3 days held in abeyance for 1 year.
Okay, we've usually called it a suspension, I'm presuming that.
Suspension, yeah.
Suspension.
I'm sorry.
The motion's made to suspend the license 3 days to be held in abeyance for 1 year. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there discussion on the motion?
Just caveat that they will card everybody going forwards. And the manager's nodding his head in the affirmative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, sorry.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you, good luck. We hope not to see you again on this situation. We look forward to seeing you. You are actually, Mr. DeVito, one of the alternates on the current license.
Right, when I come back on the
When you
19th,
come back,
I
you'll
believe
be the
it's-
primary.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 5, a public hearing will be held to consider whether the license to sell alcoholic beverages held by K&S Golf Management, Inc., doing business as Endicott Grill, Scott McDonald, manager, 194 Endicott Street, should be suspended, revoked, or limited in any way. As a point of clarity, I am a patron, but this should not preclude me from speaking on the subject, just for clarity. I'm going to ask the chief to speak first, provide the particulars, and then welcome you to the microphone. Chief?
Good evening again. On the same evening, at approximately 5:43 p.m., the same team went into the Endicott Grill. Since it was a restaurant, the team was instructed to go up to the bar, order 1 Bud Light beer. The individual walked up to the bar, ordered the beer. It was delivered to the team. The team is then instructed to leave the restaurant and immediately notify the police officers outside. She did so. When the officers entered the establishment, the beer was still sitting on the counter itself.
Board members, do you have any questions for the chief? I'll start with Select Board Member Bernard.
No questions.
Select Board Member Bennett.
All set.
Select Board Member Mills.
Yes, please. Chief, was this a young man or a young woman?
Young woman,
And how old was she?
17.
Okay, thank you.
Select Board Member Duggan.
Not this time.
Thank you, nor do I. Thank you, Chief. Is there someone here to represent? Please, if you, again, also go to the microphone, speak into the microphone so that we can catch your answers appropriately.
Yep, I'm Scott McDonald. I am the manager and owner of the Endicott Grill and K&S Golf Management. On the day that it did happen, our management was there. We apologize for everything that happened. Actually, we're very shocked that they were not guided. Dennis is my general manager. He's put in policies. He's trained them all individually. They've all been carding people left and right. I can't believe that it got through. And like I said, I had no excuses.
Are all of the bar staff and wait staff tip certified?
Yes, we have 2 new employees that we have to get them tip certified. The bartender that night was tip certified. He went to bartending school. The manager on duty was also tip certified. He's since been terminated. The bartender was not terminated. We suspended him for 1 month. He's gone through training. We've been doing training with everybody every week since that happened, enforcing how important it is to not just check IDs, but to make sure it's not a fake ID. We've ordered also not that this was the issue, but we've ordered a machine to check fake IDs in the future to confirm that IDs are actually real IDs. Again, we're sorry that this happened. No excuses.
For the benefit of the board, can you tell us what your training is for a new hire and what controls you have in place? What is your process?
As far as
Can he speak into the microphone,
If you
please?
could, yeah, Mr. Rock, if you could speak into the
Yes, sir.
microphone. As far as when a new employee is hired, what is your training process, trip certification requirements, and what are your controls? Do you card everybody under 30? What are your controls?
We have generally said card everybody under 30. If there's an out-of-state ID, then they have to get a manager and let the manager take a look at it. Like I said, we ordered the machine to check IDs in the future. General training really every week with everybody, just enforcing with them, sit down, tell them everybody must be ID, well, everybody under 30 must be ID'd. If you have a question, get a manager, call a manager. Didn't happen in this case, and it should have. I mean, it shouldn't have even gone to that. They should have just been ID'd right off the bat, to be honest, but did not happen that night.
Very good. I'll start with Select Board Member Bennett.
It's a tough business that you're in, and I hear your procedures and policy, they sound adequate, but the police, who are eyes for the establishments that we license, perform these educational checks on a regular basis, and it amazes me. They always but find one or two establishments, despite their policies, where a minor gets served. Of course, the first thing, red flag, it should go up if somebody comes in and asks for Bud Light. It seems to be always their drink of choice. But anyways, disappointed it happened to you. All you can do is be vigilant, train your employees, but always be reinforcing that they need to card people. And they have to keep their eyes on their customers. So, sorry that it happened to you, but there's a reason we do these educational checks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Select Board Member Mills.
Thank you, God. Mr. McDonald, how old was the employee that served in this situation?
21.
The
21.
The employee was just
Yes.
21?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
He's 21. He did go through bartending school. He was tip certified. He's a Navy Reserve. He's usually a responsible guy. Like I said, we did not terminate him, but he was suspended for a month. Came back, further training.
Thank you. Select Board Member Duggan.
Thank you. Just the same comments that I made previously about thinking about just carding everybody. That way you don't worry about offending everybody. You just say it's a policy, like Fenway Park. Just do everybody. That way, you kind of it's not a guaranteed check, but at least it shows that you're making the effort. Also about the point of sale software, oftentimes that prompts to verify that the ID check has been made. I think once that bottle hits that bar in front of the person, then at that point, there's the point of no return, right? So best to just be on the safe side. I mean, this is your business, so you want to protect it, and this is, I think, the best way to do that in this situation, is card everybody. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Select Board Member Bernard.
I agree also. I think you should card everybody. Again, communication comes down to management, policies and procedures. So I would definitely card everybody.
Yeah, we do have a small staff, especially through COVID. It shrunk a lot. So my managers have worked dead on one-on-one with each one of the bartenders, and that's why, again, it was shocking to see it, because they've worked on such a one-on-one basis with them that we thought everybody was trained up very well. And of course, this one especially, he's been very good with it. Just shocked.
But if they card everybody, then there's
Yep.
no room for error.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely willing to adopt that.
Thank you. I have no questions. This is a public hearing. Is there any member of the public who'd like to speak to this issue? Yes, sir. Yeah, I need you to go to the microphone, Mr. Bradstreet.
Thank you. Again, Bill Bradstreet, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. Listening to what's been said, the suggestions that have been made, one of the thoughts that comes to my mind is that once the word gets out that everyone is carded, it's less likely that someone might try to sneak in. It's getting the word out that you don't allow these things, that you're gonna get carded and caught or caught. It's just getting the word out to the general public. Kids will try anything. We all know that. They'll try anything. But if they know, they stand a good chance of getting caught, or that they will be caught. I think that's a big deterrence. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Motion made. Do I have a
Second.
second? Ian
Second.
seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Chairman, make a motion that we have the license suspended for 3 days and held in abeyance.
For a period of?
3 days.
No, for a
For
period
1
of
year,
a
I'm sorry, 1 year.
Thank you. Motion made?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I don't feel that 3 days. I'm going to say at least 1 day, because this isn't as big of an establishment as the Wine Corporation.
Well, I'll hold for 1 second. I'll
yeah.
hold for 1 second. Let me get a
Okay.
second so we can start discussion. I have a
Second.
motion and a second. Now we can have discussion.
Thank
So
you.
I'd like to go 1 day suspension.
Okay, are you going to make that an
I'll make that a
amendment?
motion. Yes, I'll amend that to 1 day.
Okay, I'll ask Dan to speak to it first because he was the,
Thank you. So, looking back on our history, most of the time in cases like this, we've settled in on the 3 days for consistency. There was a time or two when we did something like a 1 day, but that's not fair to everybody. Everybody should be treated fairly. It's the same violation regardless of the fact that it's a small firm versus a big firm. It's an individual location. Nothing to do with corporate in this case. Same situation, and I think 3 days in abeyance is more than fair. I would hesitate on a 1 day to have them serve it, the suspension. But 3 days held in abeyance, I think, is what we've typically done.
mechanically, I'll have to ask for a second for your
Okay.
amendment. Is there a second to the amendment?
Yes, I
Thank
second.
you. Is there more discussion on the amendment to change this to a 1-day suspension held in abeyance? Mr. Duggan?
Yeah, I agree with Selectman Bennett that the 3 days shows that this is a serious offense and that, that a repeat within 1 year, a repeat violation within 1 year will have some significant financial penalty to it. So I would not agree to a 1 day.
Okay, thank you. Selectman Mills?
I think that 1 day is sufficient, and I also respect the comments by my colleagues otherwise. And also, before we take a vote, if the chief wishes to be heard in the matter, I like to ask to include him.
Chief,
But-
any comments on the deliberations?
At this point in time, this is the first incident we had at the establishment for an alcohol compliance issue. I do agree consistency is probably the better practice, but I'll leave that up to the board to decide.
Thank you. I'll offer my thoughts as well. Historic precedence doesn't necessarily dictate what we do for the future in all times. However, our booklet specifically says and recommends that a first offense be a 3-day held in suspension if that were to happen. Every case has different mitigating factors. We have gone less in some cases for specific mitigating factors for that issue. But I agree with the consistency. Size is immaterial. Someone getting harmed or hurt or overserved, doesn't matter whether it's a big corporation or a mom and pop store. So I can't follow that line of reasoning. So I will not be voting for the amendment, as it were. Is there any more conversation on the amendment? So we are voting first on the amendment to change this to a 1-day suspension held in abeyance. All those in favor of 1-day suspension held in abeyance, say aye.
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 And no is 2 to 3.
We
I'm
lost.
presuming
Okay.
No.
okay. We revert back to the main motion, which is a 3-day suspension held in abeyance. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. We hope, again, not to see you in this sort of matter again for more than a year, ever again, but the year is the factor right now. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, and I believe that part of your motion, Mr. Bennett, was the similar card, everybody.
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. The clerk wanted the clarity. Thank you. With the board's indulgence, I have to find what I did with my agenda.
Yeah, yeah.
I got it here. I'd like to move item number 9 forward now, given the board will consider a request to sign a 10-year contract Comcast for the provisions of cable service. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You received a memorandum in your packets on Friday from Attorney William Hewig with KP Law. Assistant Town Manager Jen Breaker is at the microphone. She's joined tonight by Mark McDermott, who's a member of our Cable Committee, as well as David Mills, who serves on that committee at the pleasure of the Select Board. Also in the audience tonight, Greg Dolan, the Executive Director of Dcat. I believe behind him is Ginny Ahern, the Operations Director of Dcat, and next to him is Kirk Jones, who's a board member with Dcat. With that, I would turn it over. Did I miss anybody else associated with either Dcat or the Cable Committee? Okay. I would turn it over to Ms. Breaker to explain the work that the Cable Committee has been doing and the good outcome that they were able to achieve.
Thank you. Good evening. On behalf of the Cable Committee, I am pleased to present to the board for your consideration a new license agreement with Comcast. As the town manager mentioned, you did receive an executive summary in your packet from our attorney. There's really 3 main areas to point out to you on that license. The first is letter A, the term. This is a 10-year agreement. We were previously in a 10-year agreement with Comcast. The committee did work and evaluate options of shorter lengths to try to align the Comcast and the Verizon license. They were not successful of that, but also when the committee negotiated the Verizon renewal license for the last contract, they were successful in getting language in there that if in a subsequent Comcast license, they were able to get higher percentages that Verizon would have to match. So that makes the need for the licenses to match in term length less of a priority because the dollar amounts will match going forward. The other 2 items are on page 3. Sorry, the page numbers are not labeled. Under section F, the annual operating support and the PEG access capital contributions. Both of these numbers have increased. In the current license, the town receives 3% under the annual operating support, going up to 4%. So this is an area where Verizon will need to go up from the 3% to the 4% once this license is executed and recorded. And the PEG access capital contributions, that's increasing approximately 5% to $41,100. The amount that Verizon is paying us under there currently is a little bit more. It does fluctuate because theirs is not a set number. It's based on subscriber count. But if the numbers become out of sync and Verizon dips below, we do have the opportunity to go back and try to get the match. The rest of the executive summary is fairly standard, but I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
I'd like to start with Select Board Member Mills as our representative.
Thank you, God. I have no questions. I just want to say that the work that Jen and the committee put in on this was really superb work and tedious. And I think that the Comcast people tried to wear us down, and they did not do that. I say, Jen, job well done, and I recommend that we approve the contract as it is presented.
Thank you. Select Board Member Duggan.
Thank you. Just some questions about the funding for Dcat. So you mentioned that there's an increase of 41,000. Okay. So will that, I assume, is there a similar increase with the Verizon contract? I don't recall the details of that one.
So the $41,100, we currently receive $39,800 in that section. So it is a very small increase right there. The Verizon license right now is approximately 45 in that area, but that number is tied to, we received $21,000, and then the remainder of that is based on subscriber numbers, so it fluctuates a little bit, payment to payment, depending on how many subscribers Verizon has, but we've been seeing it around 4,500.
Okay. And is this the only funding that Dcat gets is from Verizon and Comcast? Does the town kick anything in terms of like for tonight's coverage? Does the town pay
No.
anything?
So they receive the 4%, well, they will be receiving the 4% from Comcast, which is currently the 3% right now, and currently the 3% from Verizon, which will go up to 4%. Under the 3% in years previous, that's about $387,000 annually, typically paid in monthly installments. And then they receive the PEG access capital contributions. I don't want to speak for Dcat, but they also do some small fundraising that makes up
Okay.
some contributions that they receive as well.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that Dcat continue to be viable and have enough revenue to hire people, purchase new equipment, and just kind of continue to provide this high quality content. I know it's a challenge with capturing local programs, but I know that residents depend on this type of coverage to watch from home, and so it's important that we continue to keep up to date on the technology. The upgrades at the senior center have been well received. It's taken a room that was difficult to meet in terms of coverage, remote coverage. So hope to continue to see upgrades in equipment and allow the staff to kind of get out and hit the streets and actually provide local coverage, football games, sporting events, local concerts, that kind of thing. So it's it's become, it used to be just kind of a thing that was just an aside, that people were forced to come here and sit in the room. So with COVID and some of the other constraints that we have, it's quite valuable to be able to sit at home and you can't actually participate, but you can see it in real time. And the YouTube component is great because it's just on demand. You don't have to wait for it to cycle through. You may not have cable at home, and the internet is the only way to see this. So I'm all set, and kudos for the work of the committee. I know that it can be tedious working with a large corporation. They don't really give up their funds readily, as we know. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think you'll be pleased with the next agenda item. We'll address some of your comments. Turn to Select Board Member Bernard.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to see it's a maximum term of 10 years, right, for the renewal license. Has it always been 10 years, Jen?
So this license has been 10 years. That's the most that we can do. We were initially pursuing a shorter term license to align it because the Comcast and Verizon licenses expire
So was it
4 years apart. So we
Yeah.
were trying to align them so that we would be renewing both of them at the same time for better negotiation
But there was
tactics.
shorter terms before, not just,
When we renegotiated the Comcast license a few years ago, we negotiated that at a 5-year license in hopes of trying to get this license at a shorter term, which has become less of a priority.
okay. And I want to say, I think Jenny and Greg and the Dcat crew do a fantastic job. Thank you. And just a couple more questions. The bond, I'd like to see bonds. Steve, is that sufficient, those dollar amounts from Jen for the construction installation? The amount of $50,000 to guarantee satisfactory construction? Have we done some research on that to make sure that we're fully covered and identified?
Typically, bonds, the size of a bond correlates to the size of a project. So on a major public works project, you'd see a much bigger bond. The $50,000 threshold, I trust, is the right number based on, Bill Hewig does work across the Commonwealth on these contracts.
Great.
So I have confidence that it's a sufficient number.
Excellent. And this is all great. This is all information for me, too. being new to this. Comcast pays the standard 50 cents per subscriber license fee. I mean, how much did they pay before? Did that go up?
That is the standard fee.
It is
That
the
does not
standard?
change.
That's not, you can't negotiate any of that? Okay, just trying to get taxpayers more money in the town. I liked seeing about that PEG access capital contribution. I didn't know how all that worked, so that's really good. And the annual operating support, what have the numbers been? Is that standard, you know, for the company to other towns? Like, have you
So-
done it across, you know, the other town? I always like to see the peers.
Sure.
I'm big about peers.
The most it can be is 5%, and 3% was standard. You're starting to see more 4 and 5% agreements, so we will continue to work on getting that closer to the 5. That does have a direct correlation back to the subscribers, though, because that fee is passed on. So one thing the Cable Committee was very cognizant of was balancing the needs of Dcat and making sure they could continue to operate in the important ways Select Board Member Duggan pointed out and the ways outlined in the business plan moving forward, but also not having too much of an impact on the subscribers.
Okay, great. No, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Select Board Member Bennett.
Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that that fee goes back to the subscribers on their bills. 4% is reasonable, 1% increase is fine. But please confirm the amount that Verizon does give for the PEG contribution.
For the PEG contribution, they pay $21,000, and then they pay a rate per subscriber. So it fluctuates a little bit depending on how many subscribers they have.
And the total is
It's approximately $45,000.
45, I think you said 4,500
Oh.
initially, but 45,000. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you. I appreciate the hard work of the committee. Thank you for being here, Mr. McDermott, and representing the rest of the committee as well. The newest member of the committee jumped right in with both feet. I appreciate all that Dcat does in providing services for the town, and actually would invite you, if you want to, plug Dcat and tell us about what you would, I'm going to give you a free commercial. What will you do with the money?
You can jump in before Greg speaks. I think the Cable Committee would be remiss not to thank Greg for all his work on the
Yeah,
cable renewal. He was an invaluable
Yep,
resource
thank you as
to
well.
us as
Yep.
well.
Sorry, I didn't mean to leave anybody out, sorry.
Thank you. I'm no stranger to Dcat. It's good to talk to everyone at home again. I'd just like to say first that it was a really thorough process, and I appreciate the work of Jen and the Cable Committee to really identify what the cable needs were for the town and work backwards to the funding that would be appropriate. I do think that we'll be able to expand our capacity instead of just sort of keeping on the status quo. This does give us an opportunity, particularly on the government side, to bring more meetings, to invest more in technology, and make government more accessible to people at home. I think during the last year and a half through COVID, we've seen very much increased demand for this sort of local content, particularly government content. Through the pandemic, it was really the only way for people to access these meetings. And these meetings, you know, they really affect people more than a lot of the bigger things that might be more enticing to watch on TV or the bigger national things. You know, what's happening in your backyard is just so important, and we're really committed to making that accessible to the town. So I think you can look forward to seeing more government content, and we're really excited to really start bringing students back in. It's been hard through COVID with some of the restrictions to have to scale back some of our educational offerings a little bit, and we're excited to really have that capacity coming back in the near future. So thank you, Gardner, and thank you, Jen, and the Cable Committee again.
Yes, thank you to the Cable Committee, everybody, so. I do have a thought. I'm not, certainly, you worked hard and long on this contract. I'm not going to suggest things should change here. However, as you speak to Verizon, there's a couple of things that I'm concerned about a 10-year contract with fixed numbers in it, because you'll have diminished returns. In 10 years from now, that $411,000 will have a diminished value. Certainly the other amounts that are tied directly to membership or tied to gross income will increase as the profits or as the value of the dollar keeps pace with over 10 years. the others do diminish. So you may want to, I don't know if you'll have escalations in there to consider, an annual escalation of a certain small percentage to keep up cost, maybe not cost of living, but some other index that will keep that 411, and I'm just choosing that number right now, but keep that 411 at the same dollar value in 2031 as it is in 2021.
Greg definitely wants to add some insight.
Okay.
We don't typically see that in the licenses, and,
Right.
and that's, this is a difficult area to negotiate where you have two main providers, 351 communities. They try to keep things consistent, and there's not much room for creativity with these license negotiations. But one thing we have seen is, as I mentioned with the Verizon license, where we have a set of 21 and then the number on the subscribers, we are seeing that subscriber rates are dropping. So because we don't have a set number, that number's decreasing, and we would run the risk of actually ending up with a smaller number than the number we began with. So we, the committee, and with the guidance of Greg, felt stronger about a set number so we could budget and plan.
No, and I would agree that tying it to membership with a declining membership in a generation that is less tied to a cable, with all of their opportunities and options for receiving programming, is probably wise, and I appreciate that. So I'm presuming that neither of them have exclusivity language, meaning a third provider would be welcome to come in as long as it went through the Cable Commission conditions in review. Okay. That's all I had.
So a third one could come in as long as it was equal.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. You have a follow-up, please?
Yeah.
Select Board Member Duggan?
So just along that vein about kind of the cost of living increases over a 10-year period, sort of like the time value of money. When we talk about subscribers, are we talking about, for example, I have Verizon Fios, but I only have the internet access. I don't have the TV or the local phone. So am I considered a subscriber?
No, this is for cable subscribers only.
So subscriber is someone that has the TV package.
Correct.
All right, so that's another impact on the reduced level of revenue, is people cut the cord and only stream all their content, be it Netflix or YouTube TV or whatever. So the subscriber count will reduce itself over time, so your income your revenue will decrease. So that should be a concern. And that's why earlier I mentioned, does the town contribute anything? Because that's a difficult thing, because if you're a taxpayer, and you're a subscriber, you're paying, and then you'd be double charged if there was also some type of tax contribution as well. So I'm not sure how that could be figured out, unless you had the list of all the subscribers and then somehow exclude them.
But there is no tax component to this.
No,
So
I'm just
there's no
saying,
necessity
if
for
the
us to.
town, if the town at some point may need to contribute to keep the Dcat level of service what it is today.
So would we want to negotiate instead of 10 years, that's why I said, is it usually 10? Would it be less? Should we?
I don't know. Maybe the town should become a provider of
Right.
broadband.
We've actually.
Another thing for you,
actually
Steve.
gone
Guess
towards the
that's a
internet route, and that's
third
not where
rail.
we're going.
Maybe Aaron will take it.
That's a third rail, so I'll just forget I even mentioned that.
Is there any other comments by the board?
Dan?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
who's signing the contract? It says a request to sign. Who is the signee or signer?
That would be the chair of the board. Thank you. Oh, all of us, I apologize. All of us will be signing this.
Okay, so it's the select board to sign it.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
So I
Thank you.
make a motion that we sign the 10-year contract with Comcast.
Second.
Motion made and second. Is there any comments on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you for the very hard work. Thank you to the committee members
you.
for their hard work. Thank you to Dcat for pitching in and being there as well with your guidance. I'm certain that Dcat talks to its counterparts across the state and pretty much knows what's coming down the pike. But the devil's in the details, and I appreciate the diligence. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll resume with Article number 6. The board will hear a presentation made by Stantec Consultants on the results of a local rapid recovery planning program grant from the Massachusetts Department of Housing and Community Development.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for having me. Oh, hi, Michael, Allison. Do you want me to do an intro or you just want to go for it?
You can introduce us.
Okay. So on the screen is Michael Clark and Allison LaFleur from Stantec Consultants. Just wanted to point out, so several months ago, we applied for a small grant in conjunction with the City of Peabody through the Local Rapid Recovery Program, Planning Program, sorry. It's through DHCD, the Department of Housing and Community Development. Really, it's for post-COVID problem solving for our joint downtowns. We kicked this off on May 27th with a small business meeting and followed that up with a survey, which had a tremendous response. Danvers was one of the most well-responded communities out of the communities surveyed, at least according to our consultants. And I think that's pretty much it. So Stantec's here tonight to run through a brief presentation. This is more or less a wrap-up of all the work they've been doing the entire time. Subsequent to this, we'll be getting a draft plan which we can circulate to the board and place on the town's website. So I'll turn it over to Michael and Allison, and thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, David. My name is Michael Clark. I am with the consulting firm Stantec. I don't know if it's possible to mute the feed that we're getting for now while we present. That works a lot better, thank you. Allison LaFleur is also joining us this evening. We'll try to keep it brief with the presentation so we can have some open discussion afterwards. This presentation will walk through the project background and run through all of our recommended projects that we have developed with the Planning and Economic Development Division over the past 5 or 6 months, as well as tease what is next. So as David mentioned, we are working with the Massachusetts Department of Housing and Community Development on the Local Rapid Recovery Plan program. So the goal of this program is to develop actionable and project-based recovery plans for communities to help overcome some of the challenges that we faced over the past year and a half from COVID-19. So this includes some collection of primary data, as well as working with subject matter experts and hearing feedback from the community on what we should prioritize with some of our ideas. Danvers is one of 120 participating communities, and this is a somewhat unique project as it is being conducted in conjunction with the City of Peabody. So we are one of 16 large study areas as defined by the state. Our minimum project idea list is 12 ideas, and we've actually come up with 16 ideas for the communities. Our study area, this project was not meant to be community-wide. It was meant to adhere to classic New England downtown type areas. In this case, I would say that Danvers is actually a bigger study area than many of the other communities across the state. It encompasses Danvers Square, it encompasses the High Street corridor, and it encompasses Tapleyville as well. We have looked to develop ideas that can assist all of these areas, but really can be applied on a community-wide basis as well. As part of our collection, part of our work, we have looked at some of the previous work that the city, so to say, the town has conducted in recent years, including, applying for a shared winter streets and spaces grant from MassDOT this past winter, receiving that, and of course, a lot of the downtown corridor rezoning, which took place in early 2020, some of the regulations that took place late last year regarding relaxing outdoor dining, as well as some transportation-related efforts in the community to kind of assist with providing safe recreational space, which of course was important with COVID, with the downtown parking study and all the work with the Danvers Rail Trail. We began this project around mid-March, and really it's a 3-phase effort. It's a very quick implementation type of project we've been scrambling on for some time now. Our first phase was diagnostics in spring. It included a kickoff meeting with the town, conducting the business survey, as David mentioned, having field collectors go out and actually grade some field conditions as they relate to the public and the private realm, and conducting a community presentation on May 27th, which is open to members of the Danvers community. Our second phase was developing project recommendations, which included bringing in outside experts. The state funded a separate effort to allow us to look from a national perspective about subject matter experts on particular topics and point those out as we walk through the presentations. And this last step over the past 2 or 3 months has been plan documentation. As David mentioned, there's a draft plan. Our final plan is actually due to the HCD on Friday afternoon. I would say that there are some editing capabilities after October 8th, so David's team is working on getting us some edits that we'll be able to accommodate, but the main part of this project will be over this Friday, so we're hopeful that you guys are receptive to some of the ideas that we're talking about this evening. The HCD defined 6 recommendation categories. They involve the public realm, which involve transportation, infrastructure, placemaking, and design. Private realm, which is supporting private investment, particularly buildings. From a business perspective, revenue and sales, including marketing, promotion, as well as the tenant mix, so looking at strategies to retain and attract existing and new tenants. There was also a component looking at administrative capacity within the town today, including a look at existing regulations, as well as a cultural and arts component as well. So all of our project ideas fit into one of these 6 categories. And finally, before we get to the recommendations, these are some of the goals that were developed at the beginning of this project that these recommendations are meant to address in some way. From a short-term perspective, there's more of a focus on ensuring business continuity as the first priority, and that third priority, which is marketing local shopping and dining options. So this is really more of an economic aspect. The short-term programming, the short-term recommendations that we've been looking at here, as well as investing in social distancing infrastructure. And from a medium and a long-term perspective, we're looking at larger projects that have a capital component to it that require a lot of planning and kind of sustained work going into it. So these are looking at placemaking investments for streets, sidewalks, and public spaces, looking at bike ped connectivity between Danvers and PBD, as well as other multimodal transportation patterns. So the purpose of this meeting, we're looking to share project recommendations and hear from you about needs and priorities and any questions that you might have. So as mentioned, we have these 6 categories for project recommendations, and a number of them really live in these public and private realms. We're going to walk through most of these. There are a few that you can see on the screen here are kind of grayed out that were PBD specific. There are some ideas as well that were Danvers specific, so it's not that we prioritize one community over the other. Both communities kind of got specific concepts as well as many concepts which can work across both communities. So the first recommendation in the public realm was looking at the rail trail crossing of Naval Streets. As I'm sure many of you are aware, there is no crossing of Naval Street today. With the rail trail, we're forced to ride or hopefully walk the bike on the sidewalk to the Homer intersection and cross there. And this idea proposes to install a signalized crossing at this segment of the rail trail that would actually be coordinated with that Homer Street intersection. So it's able to work in tandem with traffic operations at that intersection and provide a safe crossing for pedestrians and bicyclists. I should say with each of these recommendations, they're really planning level recommendations. So as next steps, the idea is that this is providing some technical expertise to help the community advance some of these concepts. This is really a feasibility analysis. We feel that this is feasible, but it would require some extra planning and design to make it a reality. Looking at parking management practices, this is a screenshot from the 2015 downtown Danvers parking study, which the consulting firm was Nygaard conducted. And this is really just exploring strategies that involve extending time limits, which provide some flexibility for customers to be able to more leisurely spend their time in Danvers, which has been shown to help increase consumer spending. Looking at ways to promote shared parking, both between private parties, as well as between the town and private lot owners, exploring the idea of a permit and sticker program for employees which enable long-term parking in defined areas, redesigning existing parking lots, which was the major focus of that 2015 study. And I'll speak to this a bit tenderly, introducing pricing, which is really the best mechanism from a parking management perspective, and making sure that space is being utilized to its highest and best use. Understand Danvers does not have existing pricing in its parking system and may be hesitant to introduce this concept moving forward, but we do want to put that out there as a potential option for the community to pursue. You know, this chart on the left shows that there is definitely a priority from survey results conducted in 2015 about having a park only once and walk to all my destinations type environment in downtown Danvers and making it easier and safer to walk, bike, and take transit from the community. Looking at plazas and park benches has certainly been a topic of discussion over the past couple of years. This is a rendering that shows what we hope is a more permanent installation of a plaza concept in Danvers Square using the 13 or so parking spaces adjacent to the CVS pharmacy property. And our project idea, the document looks at the ways to support the implementation of plaza and park benches in other parts of the community as well. The public ground improvement program, as part of our community outreach back in May, this is one of the key pieces of feedback that we heard, that infrastructure in Danvers is substandard, might be putting it a bit strongly, but could use some additional maintenance and upkeep. As part of our diagnostic work, we rated, the quality of lighting, the quality of sidewalks, the quality of the roadbed and crosswalks, and certainly found some room for improvement. And the idea of this public ground improvement program is to help define a course of action for addressing community-wide maintenance and upkeep needs. So this involves coordinating on where funding sources can come from, coordinating on partnering, deciding where funds should be directed on a year-by-year basis, both in terms of the actual infrastructure that might be addressed, as well as the location of fixes, and looking at the operational structure of an improvement program. Really, the key with this, and this is one of the areas that we have a subject matter expert help consult the community with thinking about this more broadly, is better tracking and better having a more systematic approach to maintenance and upkeep of the public infrastructure instead of looking at it almost on a year-by-year basis. Have something that looks 5, 10, 20 years in the future and has a plan, and also can be looked upon when new infrastructure is being built to understand the life cycle costs of that as well. A rail trail connection, obviously Danvers has a pretty strong and great legacy of rail trail development with the Danvers Rail Trail link with the community and some of the work that's gone on towards Middleton. This idea is looking at that 2.8 mile corridor between Danvers Square and Hugo Square that runs adjacent to High Street and to Crane River and Roberts River into Puberty Square itself, and looking at outlining the planning, design, and implementation steps towards making this trail become a reality. Certainly there's a lot of expertise in the community today that knows how to do this, but this rendering on the left-hand side here is kind of a neat little picture of what this trail could look like in a finished state. You can see this is Purchase Street, which runs to the north, and High Street, which is out in kind of the southeast corner of this picture right now. And you can see making the connections to Purchase, making the connection to that adjacent side street Healing Court there by, I believe it's the Walgreens that's there, can help activate some of these businesses along High Street, which today has a very automobile-oriented sort of culture to it, providing that multi-use connection so pedestrians and bicyclists to potentially access these businesses as well can help hopefully revitalize some of these businesses and help increase the customer base in it as well. Shared streets and neighborhoods are looking at placemaking and traffic calming measures implemented at really the residential level in neighborhoods. These have been popular throughout the state over the past year and a half. It really is meant to promote social distancing and safe recreational opportunities. Finally, looking at our private ground recommendation, much like a public ground improvement program, the private ground improvement program, the idea is to offer technical and design assistance for storefront improvements, particularly facades. So in addition to grading public infrastructure, we also graded private infrastructure, looking at the lighting of businesses, the facades of businesses, window transparency. Are there a lot of windows? Am I able to see, what's going on inside and feel like I'm being invited into a retail establishment? Both communities kind of registered areas where these factors can be improved upon. And this idea is to try to identify where can this funding come from, and also how can it be directed, and how can we work with not only business owners, but private property owners as well, in terms of upgrading kind of some of these conditions to help improve the streetscape. For revenue and sales and tenant mix, we have, these are actually 4 recommendations here with a combined one. But looking at business recovery task forces, the idea with this is that it's looking at collecting capacity within the community, made up of stakeholders such as the town government, businesses, nonprofits, and key stakeholders like local banks to provide comprehensive and impartial evaluations of retail businesses. So this can help assist with recovery from COVID, can help businesses that are currently struggling and in need of some technical assistance, and potentially, with identification of the right funding sources, can focus on things like technology upgrades, opening up limited access to capital, marketing, and other factors. I'm making a lot of references to funding availability, and this is really what I feel might be the key mark recommendation of the study, which is looking at adaptive capacity for businesses. So a Main Streets organization or a business improvement district in Danvers. So again, from our public outreach in May, one of the key pieces that we heard was businesses in Danvers Square and throughout the community feel that they lack kind of a collective voice to work with town government to address business needs and identify, problems that might come up. Many other communities throughout the state have adaptive capacity organizations. In PVD, they have the Main Streets organization. Beverly has a business improvement district, where the idea is that these organizations can help speak collectively on behalf of businesses. The key is also to have a funding mechanism to it, so that is able to sustain kind of operations over the long term. And some of the funding that is being raised from it can be reinvested back into the community to help kind of sustain business success moving forward. These are local programs and small business kind of formation assistance programs. Granted, these were developed with PVD in mind, but they're also applicable to Danvers as well. This is looking at assistance for short-term and locally owned pop-up establishments and vacant storefronts, as well as developing community ecosystems to assist with entrepreneurship, inspiring small business owners that might not have the technical expertise or know how to access capital and need some assistance in actually getting their ideas off the ground. This is really an idea that has applicability in any community, and we're happy to showcase it for Danvers as well. And I'll finish up in just a few moments. Talking about administrative capacity, one of the ideas that the department asked us to look at was looking at streamlining the permitting process for short-term and low-budget filming. So our subject matter expert in this category actually came up with some language tweaks to the zoning code to help these opportunities advance more easily in permitting, which of course can help increase local spending as, whether it's individuals or just small groups come to the community where they otherwise would not have come before and spend money. And streamlining special events and pop-ups. So this is looking at ways that the community can look at providing some clarity to those looking to acquire a permit for a special event or a pop-up, provide clarity regarding timelines and needed approvals, assistance with interpreting and addressing requirements, and really trying to invite interest in these types of events rather than make it seem like something that, I, as somebody who wants to do a special event, has to, jump a lot of hurdles to do it. And finally, the last recommendation is branding and marketing through public arts. So this is looking at activating storefronts and other public infrastructure with improved aesthetics, working with local artists, maybe having approval funding for artists to flag their trade and really bring their creativity into the public realm. So with regards to what's next, as mentioned, our plan is to be submitted to the UCD on this upcoming Friday. And the intent of this program is for the town to continue follow-up on specific ideas that interest them and apply for funding as available. So for all these references of funding, one of the purposes of this program is to really anticipate an influx of federal funds that will be coming through over the coming months and potentially years, as well as kind of linking existing programs with some of these ideas to assist with that aspect of it. You know, obviously without funding, some of these ideas are just not really feasible, so we don't want to portray this as a pie-in-the-sky idea that is nice to have, but we don't really have something to go with. The idea is that the state's trying to position itself in all of these communities and presenting ideas that kind of funding can be tapped towards. And that's it, and happy to take some questions or comments if you guys have it.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the presentation. I'll ask, do you have any comments before we open to the board?
I have no additional comments. Just thank you for the time, but if you do have any questions for the consultants.
Certainly. I'll
I'm here.
start with Select Board Member Mills.
Thank you, Ed. What's our next step, David?
I think for the time being, once we get the final report, take a couple weeks to digest that and go through it. The community, or yourselves, the planning board, perhaps, and my staff, can use this document to identify some goalposts. And then as funding is rolled out from either the state or the federal level, we can be, these aren't shovel-ready projects for the most part, a few are, but in terms of the rubric, we would be shovel-ready based on this plan. So it's really this document's helping us identify what we could do based on availability of funding and time, really.
Thank you. Thank you.
Select Board Member Duggan?
Thank you. So, I guess begin with the square. So that seemed to be the focus, main focus of the presentation. I think we used to have a downtown business association where they would meet monthly. Do you know if that organization is still in existence?
I can answer that, Select Board Member Duggan. That is not. It was either a town manager, I think it was a town manager appointed group of local business people. It was disbanded several years ago, and efforts were made to reinvigorate it with a broader scope than just downtown. We want to embrace other business leaders in the area. We can ask the town manager to provide us with an update.
Yeah, so it's not a business association. It was an advisory committee. Danvers is sort of served indirectly, and I would argue not adequately, by both the Greater Beverly Chamber, which has a number of Danvers businesses which participate in that association, as well as the North Shore Chamber, which is a much larger organization. The chair is correct that after the Legacy Committee was disbanded, there were plans to reboot it. This was going into COVID as a broader reaching community. It's a discussion that Mr. Fields and Mr. Henry and I have had. So it's something that we recognize. We didn't need the report to point it out, but it is certainly helpful to have that recommendation in writing, especially given, as the presenter said, the response rate to this exercise locally was one of the strongest response rates that the Stantec had seen doing this work around the Commonwealth. So it's a need. There's no question.
All right. Thank you for that information. That was my understanding, was that organization didn't exist any longer. But I think that's an important component of this program, because you can't just say we know what's best for you and then and then do whatever. That may elicit kind of negative responses. And I'll just use the pop-up park as an example. I personally supported that, and we had challenges with the rollout in terms of the supply chain and getting some of the pieces. Took us a while, so we didn't just roll it out all at once. So hopefully when we do it again next year, it'll be a bigger success. But I just use that as an example because it was kind of people didn't really understand what the intent was or what the final project was. Some of the renderings that were provided were not of Danvers, so people had higher expectations than were feasible, I think. So in terms of funding, is this a state program that offers grants, or somehow we cobble together some type of kind of overlying plan for the area, and then we submit that to the state's housing authority or whatever? What is it? Urban development, I think. And then they would kind of maybe offer suggestions on improvements or kind of variations. Is that close?
So this effort, the LRRP effort, was through the state. That was a grant program. We don't yet know what other dollars are coming down the pike related to COVID recovery, but we expect there to be a significant amount. Obviously, with everything going on at the federal level, we don't really know what's coming yet, but this is really just to put us in the hot seat to go once funding is available. So we don't quite know yet, but hopefully we're better situated than we were prior to this effort.
No, that makes sense. You kind of get your ducks in a row, and then once you understand what the requirements are, you'll be able to respond quickly, because that type of money is never enough to satisfy all the communities. And so if we have shovel-ready projects that make sense, not just to town staff, but also for local businesses and residents, then we will be able to move quickly. So a lot of material here. I have a printout with dozens of links. I didn't get a chance to look through them all, but it sounds like, or it looks like, there's been a lot of effort put into this. So that's all I have at the moment.
Thank you, Select Board Member Bernard.
Thank you, David. Yeah, it looks like a lot of material. That's good. That was my question about the funding, the grants. Naturally, we don't want to put in any more money. I did see nonprofits, the banks, businesses. So, yeah, but looking forward to more work. Thank you.
Select Board Member Bennett.
Thank you. Actually, I participated in a Zoom meeting on this very subject back in May, I believe, and I brought my comments to this board in June. Been waiting for them to come to us with their final report. And yes, we need to do some type of downtown, or not downtown, but Danvers Business Association that includes all of the town, so that we can get input, comments from the business owners and get them to buy into these projects that we hope can move forwards when there's money.
Thank you. So, of the recommendations of the report, with respect to Danvers, I realize it was a joint with Peabody. What is your, if small amounts of funding, medium amounts of funding, or large amounts of funding come through, what are your priorities for each of those fundings? What are you recommending we would invest in first?
My priorities, staff expansion. Realistically, though, if it were large pots of money that were tied to infrastructure, which we do expect from everything being signed at the federal level, something like that continuation of the rail trail would certainly be a top priority for that sector. Some of the smaller pots of funding, usually identified at the state level, could certainly help with things that you've all said tonight, which include public realm improvements, private realm improvements, and a business improvement district. Those three recommendations, while they're not part and parcel of the same thing, they all kind of culminate to make up a more cohesive downtown, with the business community able to talk with each other, vet ideas, and bring those administratively to the staff, to you all, and to the other boards and committees in town. So funding for that would be crucial, because that is a larger effort. That it's not a thankless task, but it might not be as applauded as a larger infrastructure project.
So one of the things that, having been here a long time, sometimes my dates get, blurred. But we had a very large and extensive traffic study about downtown and downtown parking, and one of the major goals, or one of the major recommendations, was improve signage. That we have a lot of spaces that people don't recognize as spaces. We heard it a lot when the pop-up park went in. I think we all, many of us were championing the pop-up park, saying, yes, we're losing 13 spaces, but you've got behind CVS, you've got behind Brothers, you've got a crossover across the street, you've got parking all over, but there was a real emphasis from that report on improved and adequate signage. So I'm wondering if some of this money or the ARPA money can be used to see that to fruition.
Yep, that is absolutely a possibility. We do have a signage improvement package for the downtown and a wayfinding plan. Some of that has already been deployed with the small amounts of funding that we have, but for a larger effort to really get downtown well-signed and also so the signs make sense with each other, they're internally consistent, it would be nice to have additional funding for that, yes.
Okay. I have nothing else. Board members, anything else? Well, we thank you for the report. We thank the people who are joining us remotely for your hard work and efforts, and appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, would you
Yes.
consider taking 8 next?
I would. All right, we will move 8 up, and the board will consider a vote to support proposed legislation to rename Columbus Day as Indigenous Peoples' Day. I'll ask the town manager to kick this off.
I'll be brief in introducing our speakers and the materials. You did receive in your packets tonight 3 documents. The first is a recent draft letter from the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee supporting a bill that has been proposed at the state, which is the second attachment, House Bill 3665, which proposes to rename Columbus Day as an Indigenous Peoples' Day. And then the third document, the date is highlighted, but the topic remains relevant. In the last legislative session, the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee submitted a similar request to the board, and the document there is the memorandum of support from the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee, and that's a perfect segue because we're joined tonight by Bob Gamer and Bill Graham from the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee to make their presentation to the board.
Hello, and thank you for letting us speak. Reasons that Columbus Day must be changed on the state calendar to Indigenous Peoples' Day remain glaring enough. Although a master, inimitable navigator, and brave mariner to begin with, Columbus never stepped foot in the continental United States. Moreover, his treatment of the Indian tribes that he ran into on his voyage can only be described as appalling, even for the time in which he lived. These natives were seized, enslaved, and forced to convert to Christianity. Many suffered and died from the diseases the white man brought with them. So great was this devastation that 60 years after Columbus landed, only a few hundred of the 250,000 Taino Indians were still alive on the island. 250 of 250,000. In what is now the Dominican Republic. To quell unrest and further rebellion, Columbus ordered alleged violators to be killed and their mutilated and dismembered bodies paraded through the streets. The overall treatment of the Indians by Columbus was in fact so heinous that King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, no angels themselves, these were the monarchs that initiated the Spanish Inquisition. These monarchs, Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand, ordered Columbus to cease his violent actions against the Indian population. Even given the general mistreatment of native populations by European explorers, the facts clearly show that Columbus far exceeded the usual standard. In short, Columbus does not represent a person who in any way deserves to be honored with an official holiday. Instead, this honor should go to the rightful inhabitants of the great state, of this great state, those who suffered a long history of persecution in the subjugation of their natural human rights, namely the indigenous people. Given this background, we strongly and respectfully suggest that the Select Board send a letter urging the passing of H.3191, an act establishing an Indigenous Peoples' Day, taking Columbus Day off the state calendar. I want to add that this is in no way an anti-Italian move. The Italians have given us the likes of maybe the greatest genius of all time, Leonardo da Vinci. There was Michelangelo, Dante, Joe DiMaggio. But the facts are the facts. Thank you, and we'll take any questions.
Thank you. I'd like to start first with our representative on the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee, David Mills.
Thank you, Gardner. This committee, which was born 30 years ago, mostly by the leadership of David McKenna, has turned into a truly robust, committed bunch of citizens who are raising all kinds of important issues for our town. This particular matter, I think, has been 2 years within the consideration of the committee. I, of course, support whatever this committee has asked us to do tonight. I'm wondering if there's something else by way of making personal appearance at some upcoming committee, some legislative committee. I'm looking at the handout, and I'm looking at the names of the state I don't know if they're senators or representatives of, there's only about 20 of them, and I don't see our state representative and our senator on this list. I just think what's before this board tonight should be passed. I don't know, and I should have raised this at our last meeting. Some communities in Massachusetts, I guess it is Cambridge, Marblehead, and Somerville, have already, within their own jurisdiction, abolished Columbus Day. In addition to our support of the legislation, which is applicable to the entire Commonwealth, should this board, should this community take its own individual action with respect to the town of Danvers, as Marblehead and Cambridge and Somerville have done? I don't know, and I don't know if the two members who are, and I see Rob Sullivan is also a liaison to this Human Rights Committee. Whether we have thought about that or talked about that, I don't remember. I don't want to make this go all night long, but I think the presentation tonight was superb. I think the request is wonderful. I think the proposed letter to be sent by our town manager to these legislative people, senators and representatives, is good. And I still wonder, should we make a personal appearance at whatever hearing is being held? Not to preach the whole gospel, because the gospel is being preached, but to bring the presence of Danvers and make the Danvers request a little more live. Otherwise, I support this, of course, and I hope that we will vote it tonight and do anything else that the committee thinks is appropriate in the context of Columbus Day.
I believe 2 years ago, when this came before the committee, we said, let's wait and see what the state does first and support that. That's 2 years ago.
So are you making, Bill, then
Well,
a suggestion?
I can't speak for the whole committee.
No, of course.
Mr. Town Manager.
I just want to offer a couple points of clarification. First, I'm noting the bill that was included in the packets was from the prior session. I have the current bill in front of me. The language is identical. The sponsor list does not include our delegation, but the language of the bill is identical. Bill 3191 was filed in this session. 3665 was from the prior session.
It's 3191. Right. That was my question. That was the last general.
And then with respect to what Judge Mills is asking, the formal request from the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee was for this board to support the legislation, not to take a local action. I think if that would be something the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee would need to discuss and bring back to this board, because that was not the ask that was made as part of this agenda item.
Thank you. Select Board Member Mills, anything else, sir?
Nothing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee, for being here tonight, and Rob Sullivan, our police liaison to the committee.
Select Board Member Duggan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Definitely a contentious issue. I think I have three different perspectives. For many residents of Danvers and Massachusetts, I think they only know about Columbus Day from the ditty about in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. And they also know Columbus Day weekend is a 3-day weekend opportunity to go north to see the foliage. They probably don't know many of the incidents that you described against the Indians that he encountered. He thought he was in India, and that's why he called them Indians. The second perspective is just again the colonial conquest that involved slavery, torture, genocide, human behavior that's been occurring for thousands of years. I'm not trying to justify it. It's happening today. So it's a legitimate argument to not call it Columbus Day, and I would agree. But I also think there's a third perspective involving Italian Americans, and Columbus Day became a federal holiday, I think, in 1934 by FDR signed legislation under intense lobbying from the Knights of Columbus, who is it's a Catholic organization, and but I think there was opposition to Columbus Day, the idea of a holiday, even back in the 1800s, and a lot of it had to do with anti-immigration sentiment against Italian Americans, Irish, and so forth. I know Columbus Day from parades that I've seen, Bennington Street in East Boston, Hanover Street in the North End, Fifth Avenue in New York. There's a Columbus Circle in New York. There's a Columbus Park on Atlantic Ave in Boston along the waterfront. So I would ask that, or I would suggest that instead of just renaming it to be an Indigenous Peoples Day, that it also include the Italian Heritage Day component, to recognize that Italians, why they chose Columbus and not Verrazano or some other explorer is, I don't know the history of that, but I really think it's important that we keep the Italian component in the holiday. Just I think you'd get extreme pushback from a federal level by not including that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Select Board Member Bernard.
I agree with Board Member Duggan. I think keep that Italian component in there. That's it. No, that's all.
Select Board Member Bennett.
Thank you. So, the original letter from the Human Rights Inclusion Committee was 2 years old. There was a previous bill, but obviously I believe you're asking us to support the current bill as written, House Bill 3191, and we are being asked to support that and ask the town manager to send a letter to the senators and the representatives to vote that out of committee, so the vote can be taken. And I'm all in favor of the House of Representatives and the senators to act on the bills that they have in committee behind closed doors and bring it to the light of day so that the other representatives can vote on it and let the voice of the people be heard. The House of Representatives is a closed body, and we have no idea what goes on behind the closed doors. Shame on them. But I support this letter as written. All set.
as I did 2 years ago, I too will support this board's support of the state legislature to move it out of committee to a full vote and hopefully passing of the language. I'm good with that. I'll entertain a motion.
Move that we instruct, direct, or request that the town manager forward the draft letter that is within our packet tonight to indicate the support of this board and the town of the existing legislation, which is the second edition, and hope that it comes out of the committee favorably as written as soon as possible.
Second.
And seconded. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Thank you. Passes 3-2. Thank you. Thank you very much. We will now return to agenda item number 7. The board will hear an overview from the land use and community service staff regarding the Summers pop-up park.
Good evening, everybody. Well, we wanted to give you, we told you we'd come back probably towards the middle, towards the end of summer to give you an update on the pop-up park. For a number of reasons that was delayed. Here we are. We have, are working to break down the pop-up park. We're just working out a schedule with the DPW for when we can get the labor to help us with the concrete. Those are pretty heavy. We can't get the interns to lift them. So we're just working on that and coordinating that. I think we learned an awful lot over the summer. We learned a lot about supply chain problems, as Mr. Duggan hinted at. That really plagued us at the beginning of the process. Lately, the biggest concern we've heard from the community is our inability to keep up with the trash. We do send the interns down every single day to try to stay in front of it. So the problems that we heard at the beginning are very different from the problems we've been hearing about now. The team has met regularly internally to try to address all of these problems. We've learned a lot, and we're hoping to be able to sit down over the winter and think about how we would recalibrate the program going forward. Should the board ask us to continue. I'm not asking for that permission tonight, but just wanted to come and let you know. I think, again, once we got everything, actually we're still waiting for one item to come in, but for the most part we have everything out there now, and things, I think we ended better than we began, but we're here to take any comments that you all heard. I know I've heard endlessly from community members. I think you either loved it or you hated it. And we want to do a little bit more of that community outreach over the winter. I'd like to do a circle back around with some of the businesses in the area to hear more about what they thought. So that's my update.
Thank you, David.
Oh, and David wants to chime in.
Sorry, I just didn't want to forget to add too, building off of the LRRP earlier presentation, some of the successes that we did learn about were, it was a gathering spot for the middle schoolers, which comes with everything that entails. However, it did point out to us that there's not particularly a community gathering area necessarily for that age group and for those particular individuals. Something like the pop-up park, should it become more permanent or brought back, could be that space. But that was a nice lesson learned. And then additionally, the use by families or families with particularly young children during the day was also welcome during the pandemic. There's not a lot of places to go to gather where you can be with people or around people but not close to people. So that was a good lesson learned. I just wanted to point that out to the board, that we took that away from this effort. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could offer a couple observations as well. In addition to what Mr. Fields and Mr. Henry have suggested, I think I want to underscore something that Mr. Henry said, which is that he said people either loved it or hated it. I think not everybody was at either end, but the point I would make is that it was incredibly helpful throughout the summer that people did reach out to my office, to their office, to any office they could find to share thoughts. We heard a lot of concerns about the loss of parking. I think part of that we could have done a better job with signage. One of the lessons we certainly learned this summer is if you're going to launch it, I think Mr. Henry made the point, we discussed it several times. When things were ordered and then delayed and then delayed and then canceled, it made it awfully difficult to put the program in place. So certainly a lesson learned is collect the materials, then launch the program for more of a splash. Certainly, I drove through the downtown twice a day, every day when on my way to and from town hall. Not a day went by that I didn't see somebody there. We certainly didn't have large groups. I think that the opportunity to do programming there never really came together the way that we had hoped this year. But whether people contacted us with critical feedback or positive feedback, all of that was documented. And when the planning department and the recreation department have a chance to come back and talk to the sport again, I'm certainly confident that it will, whatever they come back and talk about is going to incorporate everything from the past 6 months that we were able to take away. And whether the downtown becomes the appropriate place for all the middle schoolers to recreate, I think even there's a lesson learned that we probably do need to work with the library and work with some of the other organizations in town to use that, because that's something we learned as well.
Thank you. I will start with Select Board Member Duggan, please.
Oh, great. All right, well, I thought it was a success given the challenges that you had. We kind of rolled out components a little bit at a time. The barriers, then the tables, the umbrellas, the lights. So as you mentioned, lessons learned. I think the plan is now to disassemble that and regain the parking for the wintertime, because I doubt anybody's going to be sitting out there in the middle of winter. So
No, we're breaking.
yeah, so I think that's the expectation from the residents. I would have liked to have seen live music there, some type of stage. I know we tried to do that. We reached out and I tried to find interest, but I think you can't really do that on the spur of the moment. You need to kind of schedule that type of entertainment. My vision was always to have it sort of be like a mini oldies night, where you could maybe bring in a vendor or two and kind of attract families that way. So maybe put that on your list for next year. Let's see, what else? I just think overall it was a good first attempt. I don't think it was like the town manager mentioned, you either love it or you hate it. I think people recognize that there was a room for improvement, but in terms of the teenagers hanging out there, I think better to have them right out there in the open where you can keep an eye on them rather than like hanging out behind the fish market, right? So I don't have a problem.
Eyes on the street, was it Jane Jacobs' theory? Yeah.
Yeah, so, that must be pretty cool, right? If teenagers are hanging out in the pop-up park, then we must be doing something right. So that's all I have for now.
Thank you, Select Board Member.
I think it was a great idea to start with, and like Steve said, you're going to get people that love it or hate it. I think we need to go back to the drawing board, maybe not have it there, maybe look at a different location, maybe don't have it be as large. I understand COVID, we want distancing. Hopefully we'll get through all this. And I do think the teenagers or the kids need a place, because I've heard that there's been some disruption there, with the businesses, and that's not fair to them. So, I don't know, maybe we look at it next year at a different location. I like the idea, like we said, like the oldies night, something like that, but, look at trial and error, right? I mean, that's all we can do. We try, at least we have the effort and the funds to be able to do this for our town, but let's look at it, have a committee and ideas, maybe do a survey, send out a survey, an online survey on the website. How did you feel about the pop-up park? I think that would, communication, get feedback from the community and the businesses. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Select Board Member Bennett.
Thank you. David, Aaron, Steve, you never had the pleasure to meet Patrolman Jimmy George. He was an advocate for a teen center for many, many years. He said these kids need a place to go. And David, you hit on it. The kids do need some type of gathering place that they can go and feel comfortable. So thank you for mentioning that. And I did ask before at a meeting that you survey the businesses for their feedback. I think that's key if you're going to keep it downtown. And I think if you had a reason for people to go down there, maybe that would have been better utilized, whatever that reason is. Without the reason, it was too large a space, period. And to move it someplace else, I don't know. If you can come up with another location that is easy to get to, nothing would be easy to maintain, obviously, as you found out. But you'll do your due diligence, thought process, come back to us with a cleaner version if you're going to continue. Most of the comments I heard were negative about the parking, the trash, but we knew that going in on the parking. So thanks for the update.
No, thank you for the support.
Select Board Member Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have to say much because my colleagues, have said it real well. I think the concept was a great one. I think that Steve and David and Aaron put their necks out because they didn't know how this was going to turn out. And so I supported them initially, I supported it then, I continue to support it, but I don't have to say, everything that I would have said has been said by my colleagues. So thank you for taking the effort and taking the chance. You too, Steve, down there. Okay, enough for me.
Thank you. I was a big proponent of this, big supporter of this, big defender of this. I still think it has great value. I would offer a couple of thoughts as we go into planning for next year. Planning starts now. I can speak as a long-term board member of Family Festival, past member of Knights of Columbus, Kiwanis. Nothing happens overnight and shouldn't. So my recommendations would be set a defined start and end date. Whatever you set, it's fine, but make it defined, publicize it, and then invite community use. Invite the civic and social organizations to hold meetings down there. Have a Girl Scout cookie sale where, not unlike we do with the banners, where someone comes in and applies for the use of the banners, apply for use of the park, or even a portion of the park that says, okay, on this day we're going to do a booster sale. On this day we're going to do cookie sales or a Boy Scout, Eagle Scout indoctrination, something the community can surround themselves around and know I can go down there. Work with the senior center to get a senior program. Maybe you have a night, a knitting night, or a book reading night, or something that people can apply and know they have the, at least a portion of the area reserved for that use. It's no secret I'm a big advocate of live music, and I think that, again, providing, if you reached out and said, okay, let's get some, solos, duos, and get some sponsorship, get some of the business sponsorships for those. They're not particularly expensive, but get some sponsorship from, some of the businesses that aren't in the immediate direct area. And I'm going to make it up. I'm not throwing them under the bus. Maybe Cherry Fish Market wants to, sponsor a duo one night, or one of the Cakes for Occasion, someone else who might be a little more far removed, because obviously Family Festival has had a different. We didn't do programs this year simply because of timing. If we had known when COVID was going to be open and available, it takes us 6 months to plan for an oldies night. You gotta line up vendors, you gotta line up, all the infrastructure, all the permits, all the whatever you need to do. And there was too much instability with COVID, the ebb and flow of COVID. So I'm suggesting, the library can do a reading night. So you have school kids come down and, sponsor a reading night on a specific book. Not unlike they do, Mary Beth Linehan is a common fixture at the library for, you know, storytelling and music. You know, and I also think we should look to our rec department. Our rec department should be organizing mini rec programs. Maybe it's a game night, maybe it's a board game night, maybe it's checkers night, whatever it is. I think there's a great opportunity, we mentioned Jimmy George, I think there's a great opportunity for maybe the police and fire department, our safety professionals, to offer, hey, I'm gonna, you know, we'll put an officer down there on Wednesday night. We've talked about this when we did the welcoming committee group, about better town outreach and expression of their services, and just put a face. And whether it's DPW, whether it's electric, maybe a mini, we do town hall, we do the open houses. Maybe it's a mini open house. Maybe we bring down a bucket truck, a bobcat, mini truck day kind of thing. Just something to get people down there. And I do support and encouraged that I think we should go to the schools and talk about how can we make this and embrace this as a place for middle schoolers to go to right after school, or high schoolers to go to right after school, and making a welcoming spot. I can't think of a better place to let them gather than in front of all the eyes of Danvers. You know, we heard a lot of issues, and I'm hearkening way back when the rail trail started. You know, that we were all worried about the kids congregating on the rail trail. Kids, you know, they feel safe there. They go where they can be seen. And I can remember my children growing up, Oldies Night was a rite of passage. When the parents would be on one end, and the kids would go off knowing they're in a safe place and really don't have to, you know, your neighbors are watching them, of course, but they're congregating and grouping on their own. So I think there's an opportunity. Yes, everything that's new is hard to embrace. When Martha and Swindell and I did the engraved bricks down there 20 plus years ago, we were the first people to do that kind of fundraising, and people just couldn't wrap their heads around the concept. I think people can see it now. I think we learned some mistakes that we needed to clean up, and we did. The handicap parking, getting that lined up. I still think if we're gonna make it a standard thing, we may move the veterans parking spot as well out, you know, plan for it. Move it for that temporary amount of time so that we don't lose that. You know, yes, and solve the trash problem, which is funny because the beginning of summer was no one's using the park. Now the end of the summer, the complaint is too many people are using the park and having trash. Now, I'm a big supporter of carry in, carry out, but in that location, it won't work. I think we solve for that and think about it and solve for that. But I think the consistency of having a start and end, and developing a application program where social civic other groups can say, I'd like to have that on Wednesday night, you know, every other Wednesday night for my book club. Great, grab your coffee from Cafe Andu, grab a slice of pizza from Rocco's, go over, have your book club. And just provide the consistency is the important part of it. And yes, we did have fits and starts with the equipment and the supplies we needed for this. Lesson learned. It's also a byproduct of COVID, so there was no way to predict or know that would happen. The other thing I recommended is, you know, throw a Waze camera or some other kind of camera up there. People can see what's going on, see who's down there. And it will also help you identify the popularity, you know. So when someone says, oh, no one's down there.
I know one kid that's down there. We don't need to identify him.
Yeah.
I'm living with him.
But for the people who say no one's ever down there, well, you know what? Not actually. When you drive by there at 8:30 in the morning, maybe no one's down there, but come 1 o'clock, it's starting to get full. You know, people are having lunch. We see the tables full. You know, and so those are my thoughts. They're all supportive of the effort continuing. just ways of making it, enhancing it, and making it make it a destination, not just a place. So,
Can I just say something? I do like the idea that you said, like, have the policemen there too.
Yeah.
Just, even not there to patrol it, because the bike kids, you know, people are afraid of them.
but even if the dare officers,
Right.
you know,
Right. No, it's a
after,
great-
you know, go down there for a couple hours and just, you know, hang close.
Great idea.
Give them the same sense of security that they have in the schools.
God, and I think Bill has his hand up.
I was one of those Jimmy George kids too, the youth center. So, yeah.
Mr. Bradstreet, please feel free to offer your thoughts.
Again, Bill Bradstreet, Precinct 1 Town Meeting member. When all is said and done, the rendering of what the pop-up park would look like, can we have that tree planted down there, please?
Well, I'm certain that your comments are being heard and will be considered.
Please.
They're working on it.
They're working on it.
Third time he's asked me for the tree.
They're working on it.
They're working on it. Thank you.
It's growing right now.
Any other thoughts or comments on the pop-up park? If not, thank you very much for the experiment. I personally think it was a success. I look for continued success.
Great. Thank you very much for the support. We know it was kind of a interesting grant program, and we were pleased that you've supported us through all of this. And again, we will take us all back and under consideration, and hope to come back to you in the spring with a version 2.0.
Very good. Thank you.
Good evening, all.
Thank you.
Go Red Sox.
Yep.
Yankees.
Yeah. So, we gotta, no, because I realize the time is ticking away. The town clerk will provide, not that I'm pressuring you, the town clerk, not at all. The town clerk will provide an update on the precinct boundaries based on the state certified population numbers from the 2020 federal census.
Thank you. I've provided you with the second draft of the precinct map based on the final numbers provided by the 2020 census. What we were able to do with that is to move some of the lines. If you look at the map, the solid dark lines, to remind you, were the original precinct lines that, as they stand today. The colored lines are the proposed precincts. So once the final numbers were added into the map, we were able to move some of the precinct lines back to their original spots. So Precinct 2 and Precinct 7 will remain unchanged. And the remaining precincts have been set in such a way to generate the least impact to the residents. Let's see. The board will need to vote to approve the new boundary lines. I'm hoping that based on this map, we'll be able to go back to the Secretary of State's office and say that this map is okay, and the state will work with me to provide the materials for you to vote on at the next meeting, which I'd like to do on October 19th. That's the next, okay. And the new boundaries will take effect as of December 31st. We are working with planning to do a little workshop prior to the fall zoning workshop on Saturday, November 6th. So I would be available at the beginning of that meeting to go over any questions. I'll explain the process of the complete reset of town meeting members for the annual town election in May.
So I do have a question. Where
Certainly.
2 of the precincts are remaining exactly the same, did they have to go through the complete election cycle for all 18 members?
Yes, it's a complete reset of town meeting. So everybody is up for reelection.
Okay, well, previously that was understood because the lines changed for everyone. But where 2 precincts are remaining exactly the same, I was just wondering if that.
I can double check on that,
If
but.
you wouldn't mind.
One is changing a little bit.
Well, 2 and
No,
7
2 and
are
7 remaining.
unchanged.
That's pretty inconsistent to have two not have to
Well,
be,
but I can understand someone who may have just got elected to those precincts saying, I gotta go through this again.
Yep, they do.
Because, and you've left me unchanged. If we can just get clarity from the state on what their direction
Yep,
would
I'll
be.
confirm that.
I agree. The consistency's good, but there's the flip side of that coin.
Well, I do think with the complete reset, you have somebody who has a 3-year term, and the way the reset will work is the top 6 votes will get the 3-year term.
Right.
So like what Dan is saying, it makes it a little inconsistent that I had a 3-year term, now I get to keep my 3-year term.
I got it.
Or my 2-year term, and now I've been bumped into a 1-year term. So I'll get some clarity on that.
Okay.
Prior to the next. But the main concern at this point is that the board is satisfied with the map, so that I can have the state get to preparing the documents.
So you said the board is satisfied with the map,
With the precinct lines.
for the precinct line. So I have a question.
Sure.
I'm looking at this and wondering, how did precinct 1 get in the middle between 3 and 2, and then 7 is there? At some point in time, these precincts had to be named, and I can't imagine why 3 wasn't 1, and 1 is 2, and 2 is 3, and 7 is 4, so that it's a logical progression. And I'm sure you don't have the answer, but it just makes no sense to me, the numbering. I can understand 8 being way out there because it was the least populated at one point in time, but.
We go by numbers, Dan? No?
Oh, you don't like that 1 is between 2
Well,
and 3?
Yeah, how did
Logically?
that happen?
I can't
Well, I
answer
think-
that.
I'm sure you can't, but I'm looking at it, and
Part
it
of the-
makes no sense to me.
Part of the answer, Kathy and I have had discussions about the size of the precincts over time and when seats were added. And my uneducated guess, since Dick Trask is not in the room, is that we probably had 4 precincts at one point, and as they became split, the numbering became very convoluted. But there could
It
be a
is
much better
convoluted.
explanation
Yeah,
than that.
well,
But I think
I mean, yes, 1 and 3 may have been the same at
Yep.
one point in time, but Mr. Bradstreet, you go back a ways, any ideas? I'm just, it's not that I'm not satisfied with it, it's just a question that came up in my mind. I like things logical.
I see Kathy taking notes. I think we'll find the answer to that too, because that's a great
I'll
question.
look into that.
It's a historical question.
Yeah.
But I have no problem with what you're presenting, Kathy.
Okay.
The range, the numbers are staying as close as you can get them to that point.
Correct.
And everybody needs to rerun in the whole town. You can't just pick a precinct and say you don't have to when everybody else does. It would make no sense to do it that way. But good God knows the answer.
So I'm also wondering, is this developed through some sort of software modeling, or was it best effort as far as, like a manual process?
It was done through the Secretary of State's office. They have a program. And
okay.
all of the blocks, so all of these little segments, the streets are not in there as individual streets. They're in there as voting, as precinct blocks. So you can't just move one street.
Well,
It would be a
and
block at
that's
a
the thing
time.
I'm seeing. I'm seeing many streets bisected down the middle.
Mhm.
So I'm in a precinct, and Mr. Bradstreet, who lives right across the street from me, is in another. I
Yes.
also see halfway down the streets
Yes.
cut between. So
Yep.
we're next door neighbors, and I'm in one, and Mr. Bradstreet's
Right.
in another. So it's just interesting that they couldn't surround the street so that you would maintain a streetscape, but.
Well, an
okay.
example of that, when I looked at this map with the Secretary of State, if you look at the precinct 3, you
Mhm.
have that little nub that is in precinct 5 that
Yep.
kind of goes over, so that line was in precinct 5, and they had to take those 2 streets out. If you put those 2 streets back in precinct 5, then your precinct 3 number goes below the minimum number. So what happens is if you start trying to shuffle things to make it prettier, you impact the numbers, which is what the criteria is,
Shuffle, gerrymander, tomato, tomato.
right? But, and then what happens is it snowballs into the next precinct. So when you
Right.
start pulling from one,
Yep.
then it kind of falls into the next precinct. So the idea is to impact the fewest number of people as possible. And I think with these numbers, I calculated it out that you're impacting less than 900 people.
Very good.
Not necessarily all voters, just 900 people. So if anybody's looking for this map, you can find this map online. If you want to stop by my office, I have a big one. We can look at it and we can talk about it.
All right, questions and comments? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion to approve the new boundary lines.
Oh, we're going to do that next meeting.
Oh, I thought you said
I'm
you
sorry.
need, oh, you don't need it now.
I don't need it today, no. I have to prepare the
Oh, okay.
written descriptions of each precinct.
I thought you needed
the wording
approval
on
now
it.
to go back to the Secretary of State.
No,
Okay.
I just need, unless somebody has a really big problem with this, I will just take
No.
that as we are good to consider this final, and we'll prepare the documents for next week, and the motion would come next week.
Is that the will of the board?
Yes.
Will of the board, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. The board will discuss the draft strategic objectives for the fiscal year 2022. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You received in your packets this evening a one-page document. At the top, it says FY22 potential goals and objectives. And the bottom section is slightly updated from what was distributed at the last meeting. It includes, the second to last bullet is one that the chair asked to have included for discussion purposes, which is to work with regional and state partners to explore water storage and capacity options. And consistent with prior years, this list represents a partial list of some of the many projects and processes and efforts that are going on. But each year, we as a group sort of dial in on 5 from the many to include as part of the strategic objectives for the year, which becomes part of my performance evaluation, which will be conducted this time next year. I would point out before opening it up, you'll note some of these are continuations of, some of the recommendations or options are continuations of prior year goals. So for example, implementing the Welcoming Community Report would build on last year's goal. Finalizing options for DPW would build on last year's goal. Working with staff to ensure support and resources for the Climate Action Plan would build on last year's goal. And although the water goal this year is slightly different, it also builds on last year's goal. So those are 6 we can certainly add to it. There's no need for a vote necessarily tonight unless there's consensus, and if the board wants to discuss these or add to these, I would welcome the discussion with you.
So to remind the new board members, we did get in the packet the town manager's evaluation that I'm going to speak to later. But at this time last year, we defined the 5 goals that we were going to measure his performance on. Tonight, we're identifying the 5 goals that will be reviewed by the board next October, November timeframe, which, you know, coincides with his work starting on July 1st, ending June 30th. So we can, the way this has worked in the past is, are there other, he's offered the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bullet items. Are there other bullet items of particular interest board members would like to see the town manager evaluated on next year?
Can I go?
Sure, jump
All
in.
right, so, I don't know. I know that we talked, Gardner, before, you said something about the water, right? You wanted that.
Well, it's in here.
It's in there, okay. What I'd like to add is adding the good customer service that we need, the core value provide service excellence to every person who visits, works, or resides in the town of Danvers. So I think that's big. I don't know like where to fit that. I also, just comments from people just from around town, coffee shops, banks, whatever, hearing that people used to like that telephone service. I think you brought that up last time. You know, the operator, they don't know. I mean, I've even tried too, and you can't just press 0. You know, I don't know. I mean, we want to keep FTEs, full-time employees, down, but I was thinking something about having it circulate in the departments, like maybe some department picks up the phone on a Monday, or, you know, kind of like a live person. You know, I just feel that the menu doesn't allow you to hit 0. You
So
know,
would you want that to be a component of a program to improve customer service?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, customer service. And then the other thing too is, I know some people that aren't technology savvy, that when there's things that, you know, they need to fill out, you have to go online. You know, so we need a little bit more, add that into the customer service component too. And then people get lost, I think, in town hall too. They don't know sometimes where to go because of that person wasn't there. So you don't want them to go up to Steve's office, you know, things like that. And then what I'd like to also see in there, again, with communication, to me has always been big. I'd like to see something where employee retention, keeping employees, there's been a lot of overturn within the town. You know, I'd like to see, I don't know how we benchmark it, or, that's not even the right word I'm looking for, set goals on how we can retain employees, you know, give them more training, give them advancement opportunities, roadmaps to how they can do that. Opportunities, identify the workloads, the activities, the skill sets needed in the workplace. Because you know, things like that, that's what I'd like to see. If more jobs being posted on the website concerns me a little bit, and probably the taxpayers too, where, you know, we're hiring more people. Can we do some kind of job sharing? You know, I just saw on there an HR manager. I don't know, you know, why that came about. You know, that's Steve's department, but, you know, I don't want to see another salary, another pension. You know, if that can be, I don't know, we used to job share it, like 2 people, things like that. But the biggest thing to me is just, you know, when people leave for whatever reasons, usually people leave because they're not happy. Is there any, you know, this will be a question for the town manager, I don't know if it's now or later, but do we do exit interviews? You know, that's my biggest thing. I know when I've had people leave in our departments, in our banks, we would have exit interviews, and we would take those exit interviews and we would learn from them. You know, what aren't we doing, or what can we do to improve? So that's something that I would like to see.
So my question would be, is this something you would want to measure the town manager on in a year? Or is this something, because we already know that he's working on a direction for I'm sorry,
Well, these are the things I'd like to see in the strategic goals.
Can I make a comment,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Go
just to clarify? In the performance evaluation, operational performance objectives, which counts for 50% of the manager's credit, number 3 is personal management, succession planning, staff development, labor relations, negotiations, employee engagement. So, and retention is already there. And number 5, customer service, community outreach, surveys, website, communication efforts, collaboration with public, private, nonprofit. So I think to Maureen's questions, and she's right on target with what we should be grading them on, but we've already got them covered under operational, right. So it's really not a goal. The goal is something special, something above and beyond his day-to-day responsibilities that we want him to work on with staff. These are items that we identify are important to the community as a whole. it's not his day-to-day work
Correct.
responsibility.
Correct, but he's our town manager, and I think when we see so many people leaving the town, we need to know why.
Oh, yeah, but
You
that's
know,
fine,
I
but
think-
we
I
have a
really
place
do.
where we can
But I
rate
think
them.
But like for the exit interviews.
But that
Yeah.
happens. And I think those are sound questions to ask, and ask what the operational acts.
But are
I
they being
think you
done?
sh-
Are
Yes,
they-
they are.
Oh, exit interviews are
Yes,
done?
exit interviews are done with every employee.
Oh, okay.
So those are operational, they're not, but to Dan's point, there are two halves to this. The day-to-day, what we expect for any town manager to do on behalf of the town, financial management. We expect a sound budget, we expect the financial books to be kept in an appropriate manner, that we pass audits, that we do things. Those are the basic functions of the town manager. Now, if you're asking for an outline of the human resource processes, we can get those, but those aren't additional goals. Those aren't above and beyond expectations. We can add them as part of the standard operational goals if you have a specific highlight.
Okay, that could
But
be
these-
good, yeah.
But these are, what is unique coming up next year that we want him to focus on?
Well, I think it's the biggest thing is the customer service, the communication, and why is so many
So
people.
right here
yeah.
is customer service, community outreach,
Customer
communications.
service.
Customer service, weekend, and communication.
Yeah, communications.
So we already have a method of measuring him here.
Mhm.
If there are specific things you want to recommend, like a front desk person
Mhm.
who will answer calls and direct people, that's something we can bring up as
We
a
can add it.
recommendation.
Okay,
But right now, we're trying to get to these 4, 5, 6 high-level initiatives that we measure him on, which is 40% of his rating. We expect the town manager to do a job. The operational performance goals, which are 50%, are, what is his day-to-day job? If he didn't do these things, we think he was failing. The operational, the strategic goals are above and beyond. Smith School getting Smith School funded was a strategic, and again, here it's time-bound. So it has to be a SMART objective. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound, which in time-bound is an important component of that. It's not what he does annually, it's what is a specific project with a start and an end time.
no, I understand that. What I'm saying is, there's some kind of a problem when there's that many people that I can count.
So I'm gonna.
Right,
I'm
that we
gonna-
can take that under
we can
executive
delve
session.
into that, but I'm
right.
not gonna suggest that that's the case. People in the industry, in my industry, in every industry, have been moving since COVID in the past 2 years in unprecedented numbers. People are
I don't
changing
think,
jobs.
see, I don't think people move, I don't, because of that.
I'm a
Peop-
hiring manager, it happens all
Well,
the
I
time
am too,
already.
but that doesn't, different fields.
Okay.
But whatever. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Are there other high-level strategic performance objectives people want to add for consideration?
Well,
Matt?
I need some clarification, so I'm new to this process.
Sure.
So this 40% that you mentioned, the strategic and major performance objective.
Yep.
So that correlates to the bullet points at the bottom of this FY '22.
Yes, we're going to choose 5 bullet points. Yeah, so maybe that's the better way to do it. For the new members, step out of this discussion for a second. For the new members, you're going to be asked to evaluate the town manager on the objectives we set last year, which is this document here. You also got it, okay? And at that time, over years, the select board has said, we believe there are 3 components to his review. There's a strategic major performance objectives, which represents 40%. These are the 5 items we say we want specific focus on in the upcoming year. Things that are not part of his normal day-to-day routine. There's something special. So we're gonna find 5 special things and measure 40% of his effort on those, on how well he achieved those. In the past, it has been things like funding the Smith School. It has been things like getting the recovery, support and recovery after the port explosion. It has been things that are unique and not expected in his role, but we want to measure him on them. You know, last year it was pursuing the water rights or water opportunities at the Rebecca Nurse Homestead. There's always been something specific. The second component of his review is the operational day-to-day objectives. We expect him to manage the town fiscally. We expect him to manage the HR and personnel management, general management, represent us at whatever boards, commissions, grants, applications, whatever it is we expect the town manager to do by virtue of the town manager role. That represents 50% of his review. And then we leave to each of us another 10% discretionary, which is to say he did fantastic on these things. And there are things we can't anticipate. I'm going to harken back to the port explosion. We could have never known that was happening. We wouldn't have said anything in his objectives, but the response of the former town manager when the port exploded, you know, spoke, and we each wrote in 10% later. And when you do this evaluation, if there's something specific that you want to measure the town manager on, that you specifically feel he did a specific job or a specific task really well and reacted to something that we didn't anticipate, that's where this final 10%
Special,
is.
yeah, okay.
So today, we're talking less about the operational, and we can't anticipate the special achievements. That's an individual issue. We're trying to define this very top section, which is 5 strategic performance objectives that are out of the ordinary, that are time-bound, that we want specific focus on.
Mr. Chairman, can I
Yep.
make a suggestion?
Yes.
Given that it's Matt's first year and Maureen's really first year too, perhaps it would be helpful if they went through and filled out the performance evaluation to get a sense of what's here. And then maybe next week we can talk about the specific goals.
Sure.
Because
I think that's a
you-
great
you-
idea.
Right, you really got to understand this piece.
Right. We're putting we're so used to it, and
Right.
and we've been here together so long, we're used to it. So I apologize, but I think that's a fantastic idea.
So I'm glad Maureen brought up those questions, and
Yep.
because she's right on this section.
Right.
So let
And I
them
would
do
write-
that.
I would write enhancements to this. So I would do exactly as Dan has asked. I'm going to ask each of the board members over the next week, I'm giving you homework,
Thank you.
over the next week, take this other document, the FY 2021 Town Management Performance Evaluation. It starts out with a description of how the town manager feels he does. He reminds us of things that happened between, I'm going to get it wrong, July 1st of 2020 through June 30th of 2021. And like I said earlier, I am often not confused. I'm often not able to slot when certain things happen, especially in the guardrails of the fiscal year. So here he opens with a discussion about, or it's in the back. Here he opens with what he believes has gone on. He reminds us what went on in the fiscal year, so that you can say, oh yeah, I remember. Here are the things we asked him to do. We asked him to do a strategic major performance objectives. We're a welcoming community. This
No,
is
I
what
do,
we
I
asked
do,
him-
I do remember
Right.
some of these, yes.
So we asked him to make this one of his top 5, and then we rate him on it back in this page. So, welcome community workshop group, and we see what his feelings were, and we rate him on that on a scale of 1 to 5. I would actually ask, oh, here it has fractions. Okay, I guess it's all right. Then what I'll do is if each of you would please fill this out and either drop it off at the house or get it to me electronically, however you want to do it. I then compile it into a spreadsheet and come up with an average. On what we do is we throw out the high, the low, and then we go for the average of the median, of statistical median. So that will then evolve through this form, which you really don't have to worry about other than just put in your ratings. So if you believe on the Welcoming Community Working Group objective, which he describes later, that he did Outstanding, that's between 4.5 and 5. Just put in 4.7, 4 point, whatever it is. Or whatever your rating you feel is for these things. I will take all of this, compile it, and it will eventually filter down to an overall evaluation of either outstanding, exceeds expectation, meets expectation, needs improvement, or is unacceptable, depending on how all of us rate. So I would ask you to do that. A great idea, Dan. Go through this. This will give you the foundation for what we're going to ask his next year, or this year's 5 strategic goals are. And in doing so, Maureen, if you want to add something or recommend something under the personnel management, go ahead and ask. You know, say, but it has to be measurable. It has to be objective and measurable. You can't say increase employee retention. There's no, how do you measure that? How do you say I kept someone from leaving? Those are not measurable objectives. If you want to say report to the board on processes, that's a measurable thing. He did report or he didn't report. So why don't we do that? Does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good. I just want to have a question about.
All right, Dan's already returned his, mine's halfway done. If you guys, when you go to do it, want to give me a call about the process. No cheating off each other's papers. And
all right, so that's for FY21.
that is for the time frame that, and he identifies here what happened in that time frame.
So for FY22,
Yep.
we also have work for that, right? So
That is coming back to the single sheet.
yeah, so so we take FY21, the 5 strategic and major performance objectives.
And they're off.
They're all gone?
Well, if you decide you want to carry one forward.
Well, that was my question, like, are there any on here that there's agreement that should remain?
Well, that's the discussion we'll have next time.
That's the discussion we'll have next time,
Okay.
yeah.
And then,
So if you say, I
so
feel
some of
really-
them are obviously going to go.
Right,
We'll
welcome
add new
committee's
ones.
done.
Yeah, right.
But if you say, you know, well, and actually they are. For example, number 3 last year, conduct feasible pre-planning for consolidated DPW yard is the second bullet in this new list.
Right.
But if you see something, you know, as well as the clean action plan, or it's probably represented more as a climate action plan, which is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th bullet.
Yep.
If you think it's important to continue to report on lessons learned about COVID, we can add that back as one of the 5.
Okay.
So
we're just adding at the top half.
So just these top.
Just the top one,
So
right, okay.
the second exercise.
Yeah, don't confuse the 2 sheets.
No, I know, right, exactly.
Right, the
yeah.
second exercise will be, when you're done with this and you hand this over.
Yeah.
We're gonna clear off these 5 from 2021, fiscal year 2021, and we're gonna insert 5 for fiscal year 2022, which could be some of the original ones, could be some of these in this list, could be some that we haven't actually discussed yet. I mean,
Can we change anything on B too?
you can ask for refinements to be as well,
Refinements,
sure.
okay.
Yep.
Okay.
We still want him to do personnel management, there's no doubt about it.
right.
If you're suggesting there's something that we can add that is measurable, and again, conforms to measurable, achievable, realistic, time-bound.
Yep, saw those, yep.
Then we can certainly discuss them. And if it is, report to us on what the HR policies are, report to us on X, Y, or Z. That's fine.
Okay.
So let's start with, Dan's great idea, we'll start with what we did in 2021. Recognize that, you know, Matt's the newest to the game, but this is our performance rating of his efforts, and, you know.
So you'd like to have our.
I'd like to have yours by, today being Tuesday, give you through the weekend. Can I get them next Tuesday or Wednesday?
Yeah,
I'll
perfect.
prepare everything, and then Dan and I I'll pull the numbers together. Then Dan and I, as a subcommittee, will meet with the town manager and discuss what the numbers came out. You'll all see the numbers at the end, and we'll discuss what
So
is.
we don't all sit there and discuss it?
Not all of us.
Oh.
We have a subcommittee.
Okay.
But however, let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
The subcommittee sits pulls together the numbers, has a discussion with the town manager, and then we as a board meet, and we will discuss in its entirety, the same
Executive
number.
session?
Nope,
Oh,
in public.
in public, okay.
This is a public rating of the town manager by his bosses. So that's done in the meeting Dan and I will have as a subcommittee is simply to give the town manager feedback ahead of the public meeting.
From the reports.
From the culmination of
Right,
your
okay.
rankings.
Mhm.
Yeah. So if you give him a ranking of 4 on one of these categories, eventually it will be seen by all of us, including the town manager, that you thought he did a 4 on item number 3. Or whatever your ranking is. So,
Okay.
okay?
Thank you for the clarification.
No, that's all right. Yeah, I apologize. Sometimes the people who've been on the board so long are just so used to it, we don't see the forest for the trees. So your questions are important. So by next Wednesday or Thursday, if I can get this back from you, even if you want to scan it and send it to me, however you want to get it back to me. Drop it in the mailbox, that's fine. And then we will follow that exercise with establishing the fiscal year 2020 top 5 things and any refinements you think about section B. Okay. Thank you,
Excellent.
Dan.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks for your comments.
Yep. All right. The town manager will report to the board on various items of interest. It's the town manager.
I think one item of interest is that the Sox are up 2-0 right now.
Hey!
I was going to explain the evaluation materials, but Gardner, you did that very well, so I won't belabor that point. I would note there are some upcoming meetings, including this Thursday. The Finance Committee is going to get an informal overview of the zoning that's making its way to the special town meeting in November. And the town clerk already referenced that we'll be having a workshop in this space at 9 o'clock on Saturday, November 6th, to answer informally questions town meeting members have about the zoning and also to explain what's going on with the re-precincting. Mr. Henry and Mr. Fields will be back before this board on the 19th to go over the zoning as it was presented to the planning board at their public hearings, incorporating the feedback from the Finance Committee. So on the 19th, the board will be seeing recommendations from staff that include the early feedback from this board, as well as supplemental comments that were received as we make our way toward the town meeting.
So the town meeting workshop is November 6th?
And the town meeting is November 15th. So
Right.
6, yeah.
The 6th is the workshop.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep, correct.
At what point do we close the warrant?
We determined at our last meeting that it would be closed at the end of business on the 19th.
Thank you.
November 19th?
On the 19th, yep.
So, well, if we're having that meeting on the 19th, does that mean we won't have an opportunity for any specific?
I think it'll be okay, because if we do receive something that day, we can bring that. We won't have the final warrant, obviously, but we can bring the materials.
Okay.
The board could also vote at this point to change the board has the authority to close the warrant at virtually any point, as long as you're not inside of the.
Is the 20th inside of that?
I would look to, Kathy and I probably need to think out loud about that in terms of the 14 days prior to the town meeting, the warrant has to be posted as
2 weeks prior.
2 weeks prior.
So the meeting is on the 15th of November, it would have to be posted.
No, there's a select board meeting on the 19th of November when we will, which we said already was going to be the closing of the warrant.
19th of October.
19th of October,
Right.
pardon me. October 19th was going to be
Yep.
end of business, closing of the warrant, but we have a selectmen's meeting that night, for which we will get a presentation of the response of the planning board and any modifications made based on our comments about the zoning. I'm wondering if it's still within reason to shift that to close of business on the 20th, so that if we have any.
I would actually suggest it be shifted the opposite direction.
Oh, ahead of the 19th.
So that the closing of the warrant predates the board's review of the warrant, so the board would have that anything that comes in prior to the deadline with their, so in theory, I mean, Friday the 15th would be an option. That would be 2 business days, but 4 calendar days earlier than previously discussed.
Board members, do you see any reason to move it from close of business on the 19th to an earlier date?
I wouldn't go to the 15th.
Okay.
We could go to the
Just-
18th. We could go to Monday, the 18th, and if, in the event that a petition is timely filed, that would give the clerk's office at least the day of the 19th to verify signatures, and we could bring the materials with us for discussion. At that point, if a petition does come in, it's gonna go to town meeting regardless of the votes of the select board or the finance
As long as
committee.
it's past the signatures.
But that would at least allow us time to make copies and bring it.
All right.
And we
So-
could we would certainly be able to hand deliver something if it came in.
I'll entertain a motion to to close the warrant on end of business on Monday, October 18th,
What does end of business mean?
5 o'clock,
4
town
p.m.
hall close.
4 p.m.
Oh, 4 p.m.,
4
sorry.
4 p.m.
Forgot.
So moved.
Motion
Second.
made and seconded. Any
Second.
discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
So the 18th, okay.
Thank you.
18th at 4 o'clock. Okay.
That's all I have. Thank you.
That's it? Okay, thank you.
Motion to accept the consent calendar?
Motion made,
So moved.
seconded.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
All right, correspondence, select board, new business. I'll start right down the line. Select board member Mills.
Nothing, Mr. Chairman, except I suspect that everybody received, once again, a long narrative from property owners complaining about town action with respect to a prefabricated house.
I did not.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Well, I did, and it was addressed to me, but I thought everybody would probably get one. And the only thing I would say is that I'm not going to invest any more of my life in that particular issue. It is a legal issue that the owners apparently have attempted to find a political solution to over the past, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. And you've heard me say this before. I've been a lawyer for 52 years. I was a judge for 11 years. I believe that the judicial system is made to solve legal problems and does it in Massachusetts quite well. And so the political solution is something that is totally beyond my understanding of why anybody would do that rather than just go to a court and say, did the town do something right or did the town do something wrong? The judicial system is paid to solve that, and so I guess nobody else got the mail. I got the mail. I'm not gonna.
Well, I said I didn't. Did anybody else get it?
Yeah, I
I
did.
saw something, but I didn't have time to read it.
Okay. Unless it
Just
came in
now.
today.
I think it just did.
Oh, okay.
It was sent out on the 4th.
All right, thank you. Yes, okay, I may not have been in. Okay. The town manager has counseled us on where we are, so I think that's sufficient for now. Anything else, David?
No, thank you, guys.
Select Board Member Duggan?
I also received the letter that Mr. Mills referred to. I'm sympathetic to their plight. I don't really know the legal nuances that are involved. I do know that we're collecting real estate taxes for that property. I don't know if that comes into play at all.
You'll have to pardon me if I, again, timing-wise, we had an executive session, I believe, not about this subject, about, no, I'm misremembering.
No,
My
we did have
recommendation-
an.
We
my-
did, you did. Yeah.
My recommendation is if you want the details about what the town and the town's position and his long and storied history of this,
Yeah.
you may want to have an opportunity to speak to the town manager directly.
Yeah. All right. Moving on, attended 2 ribbon-cutting ceremonies recently. The first was for the Smith School on Saturday, September 25th. That was excellent weather. I don't think it rained any time that day. It's a beautiful facility, as I'm sure you all agree. Good turnout. I attended the dog park ribbon cutting this past Saturday. That also had a big turnout, but I also counted all the dogs too. So that's the second iteration of the dog park. The first iteration from 5 years ago, it had some design flaws, and so the new facility is ADA compliant now, and it has much better erosion controls. So if people are looking for a new improved dog park, it's out there on Forest Street. Attended the Traffic Advisory Committee last week. So just typical agenda items, residents expressing concerns with parking and speeding at various locations, taking those seriously along with the police department, and researching those to determine solutions, possible solutions. We also discussed e-bike regulations. I think the town is trying to come up with some type of policy in terms of the different classes of e-bikes and how to best educate riders, especially on the rail trail where the number of electric bikes has increased dramatically this year. Safety issue, I think, is the number one impetus for this. Let's see, what else? I don't know if Mr. Bennett was going to speak to this as part of the preservation, but working on the train station at the last meeting, we tried to create a warrant article, and that wasn't successful here on the board, but there is a citizens petition now, and I believe they've achieved the required 100 signatures. So we'll see that during the warrant discussion that'll be coming up. And let's see, one other thing. Go Yanks. And that's it.
Wow. I'll go, and then we'll go right down the line to Dan. So a couple of things to remember. On October 23rd and 24th, the town is hosting a zero waste recycling weekend. You have the opportunity to get rid of recyclables, metals, rigid plastics, compost. There'll be compost bins available. Simple recycling, rigid plastics, textile and household goods, as well as those items that you might buy a sticker for and put on the street or have to bring in the transfer station. There is still a fee for some of those things, and if you can look in the website, the town website, you'll get full details on that. I know how successful the Hazardous Waste Day was a couple of weeks ago. Another successful event at the transfer station. I keep calling it the landfill, and I should stop that. At the transfer station. The town did a great job setting it up, and I understand it was well received, and the way they did it managed the lines very, very well. I'm going to channel a former selectman, Mr. Clark, and remind everybody that the Topsfield Fair is in full swing until next Monday evening. We've had a couple of rainy days, or gray days, as it were, but fortunately they've been the weekdays. Looking forward to good weather through next Monday. I highly recommend people not go down Route 1, that they take the back roads and go to Lot E or Lot D.
Well, don't send them that way.
Take the rail trail.
Or take the rail trail.
There you
go. Much easier than trying to fight that traffic coming off the hill. Other than that, I think I'm all set. Select Board Member Bernard.
All right, down to the left here. I also attended the Smith School ribbon cutting. What a fantastic school. We should be proud. Thank you for everybody that's worked hard on that. I do want to remind people, if you're interested, they're having the Robert Lynch 5K race. Rob, who was my brother, passed away from a heart attack 5 years ago. His family has done this fundraising for a while, and it goes towards scholarships. So anybody that's interested, Sunday at 10 a.m. down the middle school, you can run, walk, ride your bike. All proceeds go to Save the Heart Foundation and giving out the scholarships. The other thing that I wanted to ask maybe the town manager, and I think Gardner, we talked about it before, is maybe next time we get Aaron Henry to give us an update on the airport.
Yes,
Yeah,
I did ask
right?
the town manager to select a
Yeah,
committee. I
you
don't
know.
know if it's the airport, whoever.
Yeah.
If
well, we
that's where the
just-
board wants to start, I can certainly get that scheduled.
Sure.
That
let's
would be
start with the
great,
airport.
yeah, because they're concerned citizens, and we want to make sure that we're listening to everybody's concerns. And I, too, did receive a letter, too, but I apologize. I just checked the email quickly before coming to the meeting, so I haven't had time to read that letter also.
However, I'd like to set the expectations. This will be a committee report to the Board of Selectmen about their activities and what's going on, and not a public hearing about their activities.
About the activities for the letter?
For the airport.
For the airport, right,
The
okay, yeah.
airport commission.
Okay, yeah.
The appointed airport commissioners will come and talk to us about what they're doing.
Right, we want to
Okay.
be, everybody to be informed of what's happening, because there's been some concerns with, you know, the noise and everything, too. And you gave information about that app
Yep.
that they could do with, you know, so that's all I wanted to report, but thank you, that's all.
Thank you. And Dan?
Thank you. Mr. Town Manager, can you have somebody check on the signs that say entering Danvers or lack of? And the same with the Kiwanis and Rotary signs that we put up a number of years ago. And specifically Dayton Street and Valley Road, and others. But I've heard reports that there's no signs or they're missing.
I know DPW just cleaned and repainted one of the signs based on feedback, so I'll
Or
share.
maybe it was, was
Dayton,
missing
I'll
when somebody
pass
told
those
me.
on.
All right, thanks. And do we have any idea of any restrictions on Halloween?
I have not seen anything to that effect yet, but that doesn't mean that it's not being discussed.
Because I'm getting questions
Yep,
already.
I will find out.
Okay, appreciate it. And given that, pass these down to the other members, take one. Given all the zoning issues coming before us for a special town meeting, and I did receive a packet from Land Use and Planning on most of them. I didn't get the one on the proposed new zoning district, so I went researching, and on the website, this map is there. And we've all seen this map a couple of times, and we kind of talked about some of the cemeteries, this, that, and the other thing. But what's not on the website is the list of the properties for the proposed new zoning districts. So I printed it out for you for your perusal and your own thoughts. But I'll tell you right now, if this comes back to me in the same form with these same properties, I'll be voting against it, and I'll vote against it on the town meeting floor.
Can
Some
I-
of these other uses, yes, sir.
I just, do you mind if I?
No, go right
offer-
ahead.
So that response is fully expected. We first discussed this concept at the Land Use Summit, I think 2 years ago.
We've talked about it twice.
And there's sort of different tiers of properties. So a piece of town-owned open space is kind of a no-brainer. Then from there are some trickier pieces, right? There's state-owned property. Then you have some of the properties that you've identified which are privately held by religious institutions or schools. And the difficult discussion that Mr. Henry and Mr. Fields went through in one of the communities they worked in previously was balancing private property rights against the town meeting members and the community's expectation that property that has been used a certain way for many years won't automatically change use without some sort of input from the community. And I think they would expect, if they were still here, to say, this list is going to get pared back considerably once the discussion starts. But in their view, it's a discussion worthy of happening. And a good example would be, and I think Mr. Henry said when he worked in, I want to say in Milford, a sizable piece of church property was sort of it was advertised and sold without much fanfare at all, and immediately became a large development, and the community said, what the heck just happened? And the concept is, if it's zoned open space, It can later be changed to whatever use the church wants to come forward and have a discussion about, but it gives the town meeting members and the town more control over its built environment destiny. It isn't to say that you're taking away the rights of the person to develop it. It's to say that they have to come forward and talk through what it is they're proposing.
Which is a change, because right now
A
they...
huge
they-
change.
Right,
Yep, a huge change.
exactly.
Yep.
So
that's, I think that's.
I'd like to
yeah.
see it pared back, but in
Absolutely.
its current form, I would not be in favor of this proposed new zoning districts.
And I suspect you wouldn't be alone.
Well, I'm just putting it out there, and I'd let my fellow board members make their own decisions, let them read it and make their own decisions, but I'd be, and I'm meeting with David and Aaron tomorrow at 10 o'clock to talk about those questions I had brought up before. I trust you all got a copy of that list, and this will be on my list as well to talk to them about. And with that, remember to thank the vets when you see a veteran, and thank them for their service. Sure. And let's go watch the Red Sox beat the Yankees.
Yes.
With that, I declare the meeting closed.